Hello, the good news for Chris Froome's rivals is that he's finally isolated, separated from his Sky bodyguards and unable to sit in their slipstream. The bad news is that stage 18 is his specialist discipline, the time trial. No pace setting and peeling off today, no tactics other than not going out too fast and exhausting yourself before the finish. Just an individual test against the clock in which one individual is likely to extend his lead. Here's how things stand coming into stage 18. Chris Froome's advantage over Bauke Mollema is up to 2 minutes 27 after the first day in the Alps. Mollema's over Adam Yates is down to 26 seconds. And as well as closing that gap, Yates has added 20 to the 14 he had over Nairo Quintana. Romain Bardet is up to 5th and Richie Porte to 6th at Alejandro Valverde's expense. Fabio Aru overtakes Dan Martin, they're 8th and 9th. Louis Meintjes comes into the top 10 as TJ Van Garderen leaves it for good. Chris Froome still insisting there's a long way to go, but the remaining stages just look like opportunities to pull further away from everyone else.
Yeah, still 3 really hard stages. Tomorrow's time trial is going to be pretty critical, but I think all in all we're really happy with how today turned out. I mean, to take time on most of my rivals, obviously except Richie, and to come out of that rest day feeling good. That's the main thing at this point.
Let's take a look at stage 18 then, a 17-kilometre alpine time trial. 4 kilometres of flat off the start ramp in Sallanches, followed by 11 of very variable gradient before a fast 2-kilometre run down to the finish in Megève. 3 intermediate time checks along the way at 6.5, 10 and 13.5 kilometres. Now, 4 British riders are already in, having been among the early starters, and we don't often get to hear from them at the end of road stages while we're chasing the leaders around at the finish line. So let's hear from them now, starting with Ian Stannard on a rare day off from the early shift on the front of the Sky train.
Yeah, it's been a tough few days, but yeah, you know, I'm the homeward bound now, 2 more days and then we're in Paris, so it's all looking good.
And how was this? No wind, no cobbles, none of the stuff that Ian Stannard likes, but you got through that one.
Yeah, it wasn't the easiest time trial I've ever done, you know, there's quite a bit of climbing there, but just settle into your own tempo, maybe a bit better than a flat one actually, you know.
And the only person who seems to doubt that Chris has won this race is Chris. What are your feelings?
It looks good, it looks very good, but you know, there's 2 really hard days, you know, the next 2 days, and anything can happen. I think you just got to look at TJ yesterday, you know. His lights completely went out, misfueled, and you know, lost 18 minutes. So I think that just shows how easy it can happen, and you know how far there is still to go.
How are you?
Pretty dead. Yeah, I think I've seen better days.
You've seen a few days during this tour, and you pretty much see Paris from here. How does it feel? You've got round more or less.
I'd say that's a bit premature. I think tough 2 days. There's 2 days tomorrow, the day after. Bloody brutal, so I will see. We'll see.
Not counting any chickens.
No, I mean, I didn't envisage ever being this tired in my life, so yeah, we'll see how it goes. Just suffer now and see what happens.
Steve, a well-deserved mouthful of pop. How are you?
I'm tired. I'll be honest. Not going to lie, I'm tired. No, I was going to do the time trial full, but after like 10-15 minutes I just didn't have it, so rode easy as you can up that climb.
How easy are you going to be able to ride the next 2 stages? Do you think there's anything in there for you?
I just hope I feel better. Like this last week I just haven't felt good. I feel like I've gone down a bit, come off it, and I feel very nice. But you know, maybe it's just a bad few days, we'll see.
Luke, how was that?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad for myself. It's just a case of getting through it, but you know, going hard enough to stay in the time limit. So not easy, but you know, it's suffering for 17k as opposed to 180 or 200k. So no, but it's a tough climb, it's a tough test, and for sure there's going to be, you know, another big shake-up in the GC.
And I'm not sure this is one where you're going to have useful information to give to Chris Froome at the end of that TT.
No, I mean, it's one thing. I think it's quite a lot of tailwind. It's quite fast, so you know, feeding just little bits like that back is even important. But no, I think on a day like today, it's just man oh man. You know, it's you against the mountain, and the best man's going to win. I don't think it's much tactics. There's a lot of different bike choices being chosen. Like I'm on a road bike with TT bars. Some guys will be on low pro disc wheel. You know, there's going to be all sorts. You know, different people have different tactics in that sense. But it's just man oh man up mountain. Simple as that.
So, 4 Brits in, 3 still to ride, Geraint Thomas, Adam Yates and Chris Froome. And these are the times they're aiming for. Yone Zahiré currently leads with a time of 31.46. Only one other man has broken 32 minutes, that's Jérôme Coppel. He's in at 31.58, so 12 seconds down. Then it's Romain Sicard, Nelson Oliveira and Nicolas Edey. So 2 Movistar riders in the top 4. If ever they were saving their energy for Nairo Quintana, they're not anymore. That's the current situation. Nothing more you need to know before commentary. So let's go over to the commentary box with Ned and David.
Thanks, Gary. That was a rather good point, actually, wasn't it? Movistar not expending any, or rather expending plenty of energy, but not necessarily for Nairo Quintana today.
No, I mean, it's quite strange, actually, because we saw, we know that Team Sky, I think, are basically saving all their riders apart from Chris Froome. So Movistar, I'd say probably the reason is, now just coming to my attention, is the fact it's team classification. So they need to get 3 riders up there to compete with BMC and protect themselves from Team Sky.
Already thinking about that. So a Spaniard leads the way at this very early stage of today's individual time trial, but for the French, it's all today about celebrating the memory of 1980 and Sallanches and Bernardino's solitary World Championship win. And it happened with an attack on the steep slopes of Domancy, which forms the meat of the climb today. We're going to get plenty of opportunities to see riders labouring up these steep ramps. It's an interesting course, David. It goes up in one steep section, that's the Domancy section, that's nearly 3 kilometres of climbing. Then it kind of flattens off a bit, as we're with Jakob Fuglsang in that middle section, the 5 kilometres long, where it kind of drags up for it at about 5%. But then, after he's done that, there's another 3.5 kilometres of climbing again, with 2 very, very steep, almost like walls within that section.
Yeah, and this is actually coming out the climb from Sallanches, so you have that 4K flat section, and you hit the bottom of this, and this is the famous climb that was used in the World Championships that Bernardino won in 1980, and it's a savage climb, steep, and it gets steeper and steeper towards the top, and then it crests slightly and then it'll go onto the false flat. So this is a very demanding time trial, and they're actually going to be doing the same amount of metres climbing as they did in the last time trial, but with 20 kilometres less.
And that's not all. With 2 kilometres to go, there's a really, really fast descent. And then when they get into the finishing funnel and into the barriers section, it's red alert, isn't it, Boo? Because we've seen a section of road which has created a bit of drama already. This is Oliver Naesen from IM Cycling, and he's not the only rider to have done this. Watch, this is about 150 metres to go. He's got to go right-handed, and he didn't.
Ooh.
And that is a great place to watch a bike race if you fancy meeting your favourite riders up close and personal.
I think that's what we call coming in hot.
Rather hot. And we understand that Alexis Goujard, the AG2 La Mondiale rider, also came off there, and 1 or 2 others.
Yeah,
so,
I think Oliveira as well, maybe. So it's been, you can see they're coming so fast down that descent. They've been battling the whole time trial. Then they come to 2.5 kilometres to go. They get to crest it, and they come down probably slightly delirious and excited. And a lot of those riders won't have done recon. The GC riders or the time trial specialists will have done recon, but everyone else, they'll just be riding this blind effectively and coming in much faster than they would probably expect after looking at the book and thinking it was quite safe, and they just come screaming around it, as we saw.
But David, there's been quite a debate about what sort of kit you would ride today. Most riders, it looks like, I don't think I've seen any on pure TT bikes just yet, but that's not to say that we won't see that.
No, I mean, I think it takes a very, very demanding course and almost a proper mountain time trial to negate the use of a TT bike. TT bike is almost always faster, and the winner is going to be averaging over 32 kilometers an hour, and because of that, that does mean that aerodynamics come into effect. And to be honest as well, many of the TT bikes these days are very light, so you're not losing much, you're not compromising much in that sense. But when it comes to the speed, and so many of these guys now, they can hold their TT position even uphill. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Chris Froome trying to ride up the 10% gradients in his TT position. But for many of the riders, this is a semi-day off, so they won't bother, just want to take their road bike. It's for a Tour de France final week time trial, it's actually quite short. It's just over 30-35 minutes long. So that's a day for them just to take their road bike out and get it done.
Almost a day of recovery, if such a thing is possible on the Tour de France, when you've pinned your number on and you're racing. Jakob Fuglsang kind of ticking over, doesn't look fully committed to this, the Astana Domestique. Jon Izagirre leads the way. We're going to take a short break fairly soon, but on the other side of that break, we're going to be talking, hopefully, connections permitting, to the man who's departed the Tour de France, Mark Cavendish, four-time stage winner in this extraordinary story of success, continuing success for Mark Cavendish. So hopefully somewhere in the world, we're not entirely sure where he is, but he is on the end of the phone. We hope we'll have a word with Mark Cavendish. In the meantime, scenery to enjoy and a bike race to look forward to. It's the second individual time trial of the Tour de France. We're going to take a short break now. Welcome back. Jon Izagirre still leads the way. He's posted the best time, but it's early days in the time trial. His time of 31:46, the fastest on the day so far. We're with Sylvain Chavanel, the former French time trial champion, in the start house. But on the other end of the phone, as promised, I'm delighted to say Mark Cavendish has been able to join us. Mark, hello, how are you?
I'm all right, Ned. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. I'm very good. Just a quick one to clear up. Where on earth are you in the world, Mark? I know you have your feet in several camps and you've got houses scattered around the continent. Where are you?
I'm just spending some time with the family before heading. I was supposed to go straight from the tour to holding camp. I think everybody went this week. I was going to go on Monday, but I'll just go a couple of days earlier. So I'm just with the family a couple of days, and then Saturday or Sunday I'll be over to Holden camp with the GB team. So.
Understood. Now you're finally freed of British journalists asking you when you're going to leave the Tour de France. We can put that one to bed. So just explain to us in more detail now how on earth, in terms of your training, you transition from the Tour de France to the track and the team pursuit in the Omnium. What does that involve now, Mark?
Yeah, it's just really getting that leg speed back and that power. You know what, the Tour de France, okay, obviously gets you fit, but also takes so much out of you. And the thing is, to do those efforts, like the track now is so special. It's like I've been saying this year, like it's completely like it's been harder than I thought it would be. To be fair, like it's so specialist now that you really need to be so fresh to do these like maximal efforts. And even in training, it's like every single effort kind of matters now. You know, so I just really need to freshen up. That's the main thing. And then it's being able to, it's kind of like doing those sessions. It's kind of like doing a heavy session in the gym, really, you know. So the first session, your legs, your body's going to be like, you're just going to do that much muscle damage that they have to be few and far between. And then it kind of comes after a few days, body starts getting used to it and you can kind of work then, you know. But it's definitely hard the first few days after that. It's just like training on the road, except on the track.
Hey, Mark, it's David.
Hi, David, you all right?
I'm good, man. I wanted to ask you because in the Tour, I had you done. I'd hoped you'd win that first stage. I had this feeling that you had this big master plan going on for months, as you sometimes do. But after you won that one, the three following, I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't expect you'd be able to dominate it that much. Were you quite surprised, and did you feel that all of a sudden you were back to having the same respects in the peloton that you had, let's say, a few years ago?
Dave, I thought out of everyone you'd have the confidence that be able to do it. You know, like, I knew it, and the team knew it. It wasn't like, actually, it worked in my favour that everyone kind of wrote me off in a way, you know. But especially we came with a team that didn't have a sprint-centric squad. You know what I mean? We were looking at the whole Tour de France, and we had a good team for the sprints, but also for the 21 days. It wasn't just a lead out training 9 guys, so it was quite good that we didn't have to take responsibility because of that. But I know I'm in good form. Like at the end of the day, like I know when I put my mind to it. I think Bradley Wiggins is quite the same. Like we set a goal, and you can guarantee 9 out of 10 times we'll hit that goal, really, you know. And I don't know whether that's the upbringing through British cycling or just how we work, but it doesn't, like, kind of don't try and let external factors kind of affect me. I know what I have to do, and I'll just do it. And what people want to say, at the end of the day, like, makes a good story if people start writing you off. And the thing is, there's a reason people are writing about cycling, and that's because they're not running cycling. I think we'd be in a predicament if the people who are writing about cycling are running cycling.
I guarantee that's the case. Mark, was it a difficult decision to make, or did you make it some days before you actually announced it and left the tour? Did you really have to agonise about it?
Right, let me set the record straight. Absolutely, there was talk from especially the GB camp about, it won't be beneficial for me to finish the tour and that. But actually, as it went on, as people saw my condition throughout the year, actually could have been a good thing, you know.
Yeah.
And I tell you, from deep down, there was never a plane ticket booked. I planned to make to Paris, and I said from the beginning of the year, but my team were absolutely fine with it, that if it gets to the point in the tour that I start to feel it's going to detriment the Olympics, I might have to stop. That could have been after 3 days, you know. It could have meant making to Paris. And actually, after the Pyrenees, I thought, oh God, I might get to Montpellier, or I might get to Parc d'Oiseau where I won. And then actually when I got there and I won my 4th stage, I was actually felt pretty good, you know. And I thought, well, I can carry on. So we'll carry on taking day by day. And then we went the next day, and I was actually on my hands and knees that stage with Pantano. And even the day in the Bern, I was just cooked. I was properly cooked up. Okay, I was in the front group at the end, but I kind of knew on the road there that I maybe should have stopped even a couple of days before, you know. But at the end of the day, like the Tour de France, it means so much to me. But I have a good relationship with ASO. The team's been great, and at the end of the day, to push through for Paris, yeah, I could do it, but I don't want to have to take the risk of everything. It's not just like I've been training a month for the Olympics, or I've been selected for the Olympics and I'll go and see it. I have to win it, and I've sacrificed so much the last 2 years for it. If people who don't know me do not, they see the results, they see going well at the tour, they don't see what I put into it. You know, if I was just going to flick the Olympics now, it would be. I may as well have spent the time with my family this year that I've been away from them. You know, I've seen the kids not really. I could count the days I've seen the kids this year. You know, and that's because everything's been on trying to make every day count, to do well at the Tour de France, to do well at the Olympic Games, you know? And to just throw that because of a little bit it was the hardest decision I've had to make. It goes against everything I believe in to have to stop something, especially a race that I hold so much regard for. But I had to make the right call, you know? I spoke to the team, I spoke to my wife, I spoke to people around me, and, you know, I couldn't, the whole year, to just lose that little bit of focus because of pride. I couldn't, you know, at the end of the day, I'd lose what I'd put so much into. So.
Yeah, I understand completely. I'm just breaking away for a second from the conversation just to say Tom Dumoulin is off the start ramp and he's away. Another man who wants to and almost certainly will do extremely well at the Rio Olympic Games. That'll be his next target after today. But you're looking at a possible stage winner today in Dumoulin already. 2 wins to his name on the 2016 Tour de France. Just finally, perhaps, Mark, or just to throw it ahead again, because what a remarkable year after the Olympics it could still be for you and for GB, with the World Championships in mind. I mean, in our excitement about the Tour de France and then your Olympic ambitions, that almost gets forgotten. But I'm sure it's somewhere in your mind and in your focus.
Yeah, not in a minute, to be fair. I'm just going to take one thing. To be fair, it was, while I felt fresh at the Tour, the Olympics wasn't even in my mind, you know? It was just the Tour de France. And now it would just be the Olympics. And then I think the good thing I've got out of the Tour de France is I think the confidence of the team will pick up, that they know if they do a job like the guys did in Copenhagen, that, you know, I'll probably be the man to beat there in Qatar as well. So I think that's been the most beneficial at the Tour de France, looking forward to the Worlds, and is that, you know, it can really give those guys that are going to have to ride 250k on the front, or they know they're doing it for a purpose, really, you know. been the last couple of years where guys have ridden and I haven't finished off at the end, you know. And especially when the majority of the guys that like to make up the British team, they don't ride with me. They don't ride in the same professional team as me, so they don't see me day in, day out. So to be able to give those guys the confidence that, you know, we can go and win again is a pretty big thing. But let's just make no mistakes about it. Like, it's not like I can go and win the World Championship. Like it was in Copenhagen, I just can't go and win. I need the best guys in the world to be able to do that. And like in Copenhagen, I believe we had the best team that could go and do that. I believe in Qatar as well. And it's not just like, oh, I'd like those guys just to give me a hand. I need those guys to be able to win that, you know, and to be able to give them confidence to go and do it. I think it's massively made me motivated to go and do that as well. So.
Well, listen, Mark, you just said how much your racing career drags you away from your family. I understand that the kids are out in the garden and you're indoors at the moment, so we're not going to take you any further away from them than we have to. Thanks very much for your time. Congratulations on a blistering Tour de France. Great to see you back to your best, and good luck with your future ambitions for the rest of the year.
Thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy the last few days there. All right, take care.
Right. Cheers. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So the thoughts of Mark Cavendish. Tom Dumoulin out on the road. He has a strong favourite's chance here, but it's a course that doesn't necessarily suit him as well as the first time trial did. It's much shorter, much more climbing. And here's another man in Daryl Impey who might go quite well today if he's motivated. But Tom Dumoulin, as you saw, out and running and tracking down that time of Jon Izagirre, who still leads the way at 31.46. Your thoughts about what Mark Cavendish had to say there?
Yeah, I mean, you just hear how much it all means to him. I think that's what comes across the most. It's, I think you do forget just how much he loves for it and how much he's away in training. So we kind of just always think it's the talent, and I don't think it necessarily is. With Mark, it's a ton of hard work behind it all.
Absolutely. Tom Dumoulin, the Dutch national time trial champion, is out and running. He's got 12.8 kilometres to go. It's a 17-kilometre race, and fairly soon we'll get an indication at the first of 3 time checks how well he's going. In the meantime, though, as he is out on the road, we will take a break. Tom Dumoulin is approaching the first time check after 6.5 kilometres of climbing. The best time was set by Thomas de Gendt some while ago at this point, 11.54. That was the time of Thomas de Gendt. As we go back to, well, here he is, Thomas de Gendt, the man himself. He's going through the second time check at 10 kilometres now, and he's holding his form as well. There's the time of Jon Izagirre, who set the best time at the finishing line so far and still holds on to the temporary race lead. But Tom Dumoulin, I can tell you, further back down the road is flying, as is Thomas de Gendt. Will he hold on to the best time at the second time check as well? Looks like it. He's still got 15 seconds to spare. This is after 10 kilometres of racing, 7k remain, 5 of which are upper hill, and then there's 2 kilometres of descending after this point. It's going to be close, and he stops the clock at that point there. So yeah, once again, 2.5 seconds or thereabouts faster than Jon Izagirre. So de Gendt's having a good day, but so too is this man, Tom Dumoulin. Last time we saw, he had about a minute in hand or thereabouts to post the best time here. We've lost the timing clock at the moment, so we won't be entirely sure until he stops the clock and we know the confirmed time. But David, you were noticing even on the 10% sections of climb at Domancy, he was riding in full aero tuck position.
Oh, it was phenomenal to see this. There are a handful of riders in the world that can do that. Tom Dumoulin, he seems to have trained it. I mean, even here, this is still quite steep, but before he was in the 10+ percentage in this full aero position like this, not moving at all, not showing any weakness. And there's maybe Chris Froome can do that, Richie Porte, but there really are not many riders, and that's an indication of how strong he is at the moment.
Well, losing the telemetry on screen at the moment isn't helping us much, because we're not entirely sure whether he's been through. My suspicion is he's actually been through that first time check.
He did.
Yeah, he has. There we go.
But he smashed it, so hence we're not going up yet, because sometimes what happens when they come ahead, he might have already overtaken his minute man, and then it confuses the whole system slightly. But yeah, we are being a little bit let down here by the telemetry.
Well, he went through about 700 metres further back down the road. That time check is at 10.5 on the road, with 10.5 remaining, I should say. The next time check for Tom Dumoulin comes with 7k remaining. And this is another steep section. And this man is Jakob Fuglsang. We saw him out on the road earlier. He's got a teammate also in Luis Leon Sanchez, who's left the start house. Well, Jakob Fuglsang last time we saw was just rolling around on a road bike. And you can tell the intent on riders, whether or not they've equipped themselves with a full time trial bike like Tom Dumoulin has, hunting down a third stage winner. What a remarkable haul that would be, as Fuglsang rolls in 13th place as things stand. Negotiating that tricky corner, well, that is the danger corner for those who aren't prepared for it. Now then, I wonder what kind of equipment this man's chosen. Very interesting to see how Vincenzo Nibali approaches this. He definitely tried to threaten the leaderboard on the first individual time trial. He's gone for a road bike with, what do you call them, clip-on aero bars?
Clip-on aero bars, yeah, or tri-bars sometimes. But yeah, that seems to be the configuration that many riders are using. Often the riders that are more climbers than the pure TT specialists will cross over. But at the moment, it's we've also seen a lot of riders without clip-ons or anything. But I think we'll only see the pure specialists out in their full TT get-up, because you have to have trained a lot on it in hilly conditions to be able to feel comfortable in a time trial as hard as this, when you've got that full specialised. Because it's such an extreme position when you have the TT bike, and it's a little bit heavier and handles differently. So some riders just hate climbing in it because they feel so weighed down, basically.
Sylvain Chavanel going towards the second time check. De Gendt has set the best time at that point, and Chavanel, respectable, but he's not going to be threatening to win today. The former French national time trial champion. Now, we understand, but we're still awaiting confirmation that Tom Dumoulin has set the best time at the first time check, as you would imagine, but we think it was in something like 11:43 or thereabouts. If that's the case, he's only about 11 seconds faster than Thomas De Gendt, which would be a little surprising, and it reflects extremely well on Thomas De Gendt's ride.
Yeah, it would, and after that they're all quite close, because in second place behind Thomas De Gendt at the moment, or third place, once we get that through, and that is confirmed, Tom Dumoulin is in first place. They're all quite close together. There's only 12 seconds separating those following 5 riders. So, although if he's 10, 20, 12 seconds, that is a chunk, but we were quite surprised. We'd expect to see him going a bit faster than that, but anyway, he's probably pacing it quite well, I'm sure.
Eduardo Sepulveda, the Argentinian in the colours of Fortuneo Vital Concept. Interesting character. You'll remember him for getting into an FDJ team car illegally and getting thrown off the race last year. And this is Luis Leon Sanchez approaching the second time check. And still we wait confirmation of Tom Dumoulin's time. As ever, on the time trial, you've got a number of big-name riders out on the road together, and don't forget all the big GC players still to come. We've got plenty of racing before they go out. Just to mark your card, Geraint Thomas will start at 3:19, Dan Martin at 3:35. All these riders start to go off in 3-minute intervals as well. Richie Porte at 3:44, as we watch Luis Leon Sanchez just stop the clock in a provisional 12th place at the second time check. Richie Porte goes off at 3:44. Romain Bardet at 3:47. Nairo Quintana 3:50. Adam Yates 3:53. Bauke Mollema 3:56. And then Chris Froome in the yellow jersey will go off at 1:04 UK time. Here's Vincenzo Nibali then. And what do we read into his selection of kit? That's just how he thinks he's going to go fastest, or that he's in for a recovery ride today?
No, I mean, he'll test himself, I'm sure, because again, this is a time trial that suits him. Like, he won't be expecting to get a big result, but he can also do a respectable time. But he doesn't. The look of his allure, let's say, he's not exactly nailing himself. Let's put it that way. But the equipment itself is just quite a conservative choice he's taken there.
Cofidis Nicolas Edey now in 5th place. He held the best time for quite a while until it was bettered by 3 men in quick succession. First of all, Nelson Oliveira, then Romain Sicard, and then Jérôme Coppel, who took 23 seconds out of the time of Romain Sicard. But they have, none of them, gone faster than Jon Izagirre. 31:46 the time to beat, an average speed of 32.11 kilometres per hour.
So going back to the equipment on this is basically his normal road bike, and they put on the clip-on bars. It looks like he's even using one of the fairly shallow section front wheel, not the full air. As you see it there. If you're full TT, it'd be either tri-spoke or a very much deeper section to give you a better aerodynamic, but it'd be slightly heavier. And here we have, this
Jan
is...
Bakelants.
Yeah, Jan Bakelants, so that's his minute man.
2 minute man,
2
really,
minute man.
effectively, yeah. Tom Dumoulin has taken 2 minutes on the road out of Jan Bakelants, and he ran about the halfway point in this time trial as well. So there we go, confirmation of Dumoulin's position relative to Thomas de Gendt as he's approaching the second time check. So now we're going to get an accurate time measurement of how Dumoulin is faring. As you can see, he's still got a minute to play with to stop the clock and set the best time at the second time check. So he's absolutely flown, it looks like, through the through those kilometres, those first 10 kilometres. We'll have 7 to go after this point. 19:26, the best time of Thomas de Gendt. You'd expect Tom Dumoulin to go faster than de Gendt, significantly faster. But it's interesting, nonetheless, to see how utterly dominant he was and taking vast chunks of time on absolutely everybody in the first individual time trial, and how this one isn't quite as suited to him as the last one was. Nonetheless, he is flying, and he's going to have about 30 seconds, is he? Yeah, 29 seconds and 30.32 over the time of Thomas de Gendt.
So that's, I mean, it's still a fair chunk of time in what is a relatively short distance and short amount of time. That's racing for 20 minutes, and at this level, he's already got a 30-second advantage over second place. And Thomas de Gendt, he's not a bad time trial. He pulls out the occasional very good time trial. We know he's strong. We know the fact that he can always pick himself into that early break means he has a vicious turn of speed, and he's applying it here.
Yep. Thomas de Gendt came 32nd on the first individual time trial, but that was the day after his stage win at Chalais-Renard. Any thoughts that the guy from Lotto Soudal would give himself half a day off were quashed. He definitely attacked that, and that was a very decent time, and he's riding well again today. Wout Poels is a rider who, in his own right, and on his day, you might consider for the win today, especially the way he's riding. But, David, that's not what we understand he'll be up to today at all.
No, we bumped into one of the Sky staff, and we were discussing briefly, and they were saying how almost the whole team will be on road bikes like this, set up to make their day as enjoyable as possible and comfortable, and try and save their energy for the next 2 days, because the next 2 days are going to be, once again, another time trial of sorts, and there's no point in them wasting the precious energy they're going to need for that today. As you can see, he's not even got one of the team cars, he's got one of the neutral cars supporting him, so whereas normally we would expect him to be fully supported by the team.
Now, here's a man who could do with a little boost to his morale. Wilco Kelderman. His Tour de France basically fell apart at the first individual time trial. He was bitterly disappointed with his performance from there, and in terms of his morale and his form, every time you see Wilco Kelderman on the road since then, it's been suggestive of a man whose confidence has collapsed and his form has deserted him. So I hope for his sake he can recover somewhat on the road today. The GC hope for the team of Lotto Jumbo. Meanwhile, Tom Dumoulin has only under 6 kilometres to go and less than 3 kilometres of climbing before he'll drop down the 2K descent.
This is another fantastic test for him as well when we're looking at the Olympics coming up, because that's a very demanding course, and so that's probably one of the reasons he's taken his full TT bike, 2T setup, to make sure that he's able to ride it on terrain like this, because I'm sure that's the bike, the setup he'll want to use, even though it is a very hard and hilly time trial at the Rio Olympics.
Just over a kilometre till we get a sense of how well Vincenzo Nibali is going. 10.5k remaining. That is the first time check at Domancy, the famous Domancy. Roughly this point in the race where, on the final ascent of the climb, on that race of some 260 kilometres in length in 1980, Bernardino made his decisive attack, went over the top of the climb, dropped into Sallange and soloed to the rainbow jersey. Amazingly, for a man who won the Tour de France 5 times, it was his only World Championship win.
And I think he announced it quite a long time in advance that he was going to win it. And I remember that day reading back and watching the videos and stuff. He led the race most of the way, just rode everybody off his wheel eventually.
How old were you in 1980?
I watched it after I was 3 years old. I had no idea that road cycling existed until I was 15 years old, so I had a lot of catching up to do.
Here's Wilco Kelderman. He's on the flat section at the beginning of this time trial, so it eases them into it slightly. 3.5 kilometres of mostly either downhill or flat before they kick up and start to climb. And it won't be long before Kelderman is on the Domancy himself. Julien Alaphilippe has had a proper go at this time trial. posting decent times all the way round. Here's this dangerous corner. Is Alaphilippe going to get round it okay? Yeah, absolutely, no problem for Julien Alaphilippe. He's going to stop the clock. Maybe top 10 provisionally. He'll drop out of the top 10 surely by the end of the day, but that's another aggressive ride from a rider who only knows how to ride aggressively, it seems, on this Tour de France, Julien Alaphilippe.
Yeah, it's brilliant to see him ride like that. There's Thomas de Gendt coming in, so we'll see if he's continuing, and he seems to have continued his fast times through, so he's not weakened off in the slightest, which is encouraging for him coming into these next few days.
Yeah,
he's actually recovered from those few days where he was on the attack the whole time.
20 seconds remain for Thomas de Gendt to post the best time and take the provisional race lead away from Jon Izagirre. Round this difficult corner with 150 metres to go, and then a sprint for the line, left-handed. When is the clock going to stop for Thomas de Gendt? Has he lost a bit of time in the final kilometres? It's going to be tight, 41, 42. Going over the line, he will do it, but just by a fraction of a second. 1 second, just over 1 second in the end. The advantage for Thomas de Gendt. So great ride from de Gendt. He will be on the hot seat, but not, one would imagine, for very much longer, because Tom Dumoulin is flying around the course and he's only a few minutes down the road from Thomas de Gendt. He'll barely have time to get to the hot seat behind the podium before Dumoulin will be sat there for probably quite a long shift, I would imagine. There we are, confirmation that he has taken the provisional race lead by 1 second away from Jon Izagirre. Four Frenchmen in the top 10 at the moment: Jérôme Coppel, Romain Séquard, Nicolas Day and Tony Galopin. I don't think there'll be too many of the French names, though, represented by the end of the day. And this is the Mont Blanc Massif. 4K to go now for Tom Dumoulin.
So there's only really a K&a-half left before he begins the drop down into Megève for the high-speed descent. So this has been for a third week time trial on the Tour de France. This is quite a short time trial. Normally in the past they've been up to over an hour long. So I think all the riders will be thankful for that, even though it is quite, well, very demanding. 26:07. So that's that puts him. No, that can't be his time. So that's probably the rider he's coming up to. So as I said before, sometimes once you catch a rider, then the system gets a little bit confused.
Yeah, the only time that really matters for Tom Dumoulin at the moment is 31:45. That's the time of Thomas de Gendt at the finish line.
So he's come through 25%, bottom left of the screen there, so he came through about 25:10, so that's 30 seconds. He's still 30 seconds up on Thomas de Gendt, approximately. So he's holding steady.
Plenty of climbing still to do before he starts to hit that descent, and some of it is very, very steep indeed. There's a 14% ramp still to come on the course for Tom Dumoulin, who is just bent in that aero position, even on this mountain time trial. And that surely is the sign of an exceptional athlete and a brilliant time trialist. Sylvain Chavanel has been just that in his day, but perhaps those days are beginning to fade now for the veteran Frenchman. Always going to be competitive, though, and always going to give you a full-on effort, especially in front of home crowds on the race he loves, riding for the team for which it all began for Sylvain Chavanel many, many years ago. Signed his first professional contract with this outfit, and he's returned for his swan song on the Tour de France in the colours of Direct Energie, and it's a good ride from Sylvain Chavanel too. He is attacking the finishing line. He's going to post a very, very respectable time. Provisional 5th place for Chavanel. He's gone all right, though.
He's gone very well. So it was a good time trial. And like I said, because this is slightly shorter, it will encourage a lot of the riders. If some of these riders will roll off, perhaps the intention of not going so hard and feel good, and then actually start to enjoy it and get in the mood and end up posting a good time. We see Wilco Kelderman doesn't really have that sort of sense of enjoying this. He's not even wearing his full speed suit. He's wearing his skin suit from the road race, which has all the pockets on it.
Just under 3 kilometres to go for Tom Dumoulin, who has set the best time at every time check, as you would expect along the way. Of course, he goes off significantly earlier than the big GC names, the likes of Adam Yates. Call him a big GC name these days. Of course he is. He's in a podium position. Bauke Mollema, Nairo Quintana, Richie Porte, and of course the yellow jersey of Chris Froome. They've all still to come, and they would all fancy their chances, I suspect, of getting close, if not bettering, the time of Tom Dumoulin, who is built primarily for flatter time trials, but is still performing outstandingly well on this climb, as you would expect from a rider who harbours GC ambitions some time down the line and can climb with the very best of them on his day. first of his stage wins, let's not forget, on this Tour de France came at Andorra Arcalis, the first super category summit finish of this year's Tour de France. This is not Andorra Arcalis, but it's a really, really testing 17 kilometres, and it doesn't look like it's much to Wilco Kelderman's liking.
No, poor Wilco Kelderman, who was the Dutch national champion in time trial last year in front of Tom Dumoulin, so it's a quite contrast of where they are a year from then.
And a contrast of what they look like on a bike as well. Dumoulin with his aero helmet on, his skin suit on, in full time trial aero tuck, pushing his way through these big crowds in sweltering heat. So humid here today.
You can just see he's starting to get that slight rock on his shoulders where his head's starting to dip a bit, so he's really going above his threshold now to peak over the top of this and begin the descent. Normally his style is so quiet, there's very little moving at all, but as the fatigue sets in, it's very hard to hold your core completely still, and you can see that rocking beginning now, so he'll be very much deep in the red now, and he's treating this summit as a finish line and allowing the descent to recover slightly.
Well, that is the finish of the climb done with. When he goes past this house, he will start to find that the gradient just drops away in front of him, and it's a really fast 2 kilometres down. You can see the gradient graphic just falling away now, and that'll be some relief to Dumoulin. Flattens out and then downhill all the way to the finishing line. 43 kilometres an hour. That speed will rise all the time. And then, of course, let's not forget that really, really tricky little finishing funnel with that nasty right-hander at about 150 metres to go. 2K to go for Dumoulin.
This is a very technical descent, and when you've just come over the top like that so far in the red, often you can be a little bit dizzy, almost stars in your eyes, and it's a lot of the time that's where you need to have done the recon so well and have somebody in the car who's radioing you the information to the route just to freshen it in your mind.
The King of the Mountains in the start house. Rafa Majka has a really significant lead in that competition. And he might go quite well today, Rafa Majka. Not renowned as a time trialist, doesn't necessarily enjoy the discipline, but this is a climb, and he might just try and show what he can do. Through 1 kilometre to go for Tom Dumoulin, and it's pretty much all downhill. He's going to set the best time if he stays upright. Of that, there can be little doubt. Thomas de Gendt has set the best time to beat, 31:45. That's the target for Tom Dumoulin. Meters tick down, 700 meters to go, and look at that speed that he's travelling at the moment. 75 kilometers an hour into Megève. Concentration. He'll be right on the limit going over that final climb. Unorthodox position, but he's got to get his big frame around these little twists and turns and not come to grief as we've seen other riders do. And here he comes, de Gendt's time, 31:45. He's got a minute to get over the line, and still he would post the best time. So Dumoulin, as you would expect, with 200 meters to go, is going to take a big chunk out of what everyone else has achieved so far on this race. He will be the race leader. Will he by the end of the day? It's a probability, but it's not a certainty. The wait will continue for Dumoulin right the way until Chris Froome has crossed the line. But for the moment, 31:04, he has taken... Well, he's taken 41 seconds out of Thomas de Gendt, who set a good time himself, but that is a huge statement once again to the cycling world of just what a talent this man has.
And I had a look at the clock as well. When he went through the 2K to go banner, he then from that to the finish, he did that in 1 minute 44 seconds. So it goes to show how fast those last 2Ks are.
There's his advantage, 41 seconds clear of Thomas de Gendt, and they're bunched after that, aren't they? Just 1 second separating de Gendt and Izagirre. 10 seconds back to Coppel and Sicard, the rest of them, but Dumoulin has clear space between first and second place to defend at the moment, but with lots of the big favourites still to come. And it will be interesting to see how the likes of Martin, Port, Bardet, Quintana, Yates. Very interesting to see how Mollema goes, and of course, what will Chris Froome do? Probability is that he will extend his lead over all of those. Will it be enough to take a stage win as well for the Team Sky leader? We'll find out as the race progresses. Welcome back. Daryl Impey closing in on the finish line. He won't be threatening the time of Tom Dumoulin, which is looking excellent once again. Impey down in 17th place at the moment. Dumoulin taking 41 seconds out of all of the rest of the field. 31:04 is the time to beat for everybody else who wants to deny Tom Dumoulin the right to a third stage win on this triumphant Tour de France for him. Just 3 days away from Paris, as eventually we'll drop out of the Alps. 2 more days of climbing still to come for the whole of the peloton and for Rafa Majka. And then it is the big set-piece finale in Paris. And of course, it'll feature La Course. It's one of the best days on the sporting calendar, bar none. The big finale on the Champs-Élysées, and we've got live coverage on ITV4 on Sunday, starting at 1 with La Course, and then all the way through uninterrupted to watch the men and the big expected sprint and the sight of the yellow jersey crossing the line and stepping onto the podium in Paris. Rafa Majka climbing through these big crowds. He's got 1 more kilometre to go. He's on one of the steepest sections, as you can see, 14% in that rather fetching polka dot helmet that doesn't entirely meet with David Miller's approval, I can tell you that much. As we watch Diego Rosa go over the line, and he's obviously ridden within himself. On his day, I would imagine Rosa might have gone a little bit better, but he'll stop the clock in the top 20. No better than that for Diego Rosa. And he is safely round that corner. Now, if you're wondering what's happened to Fabian Cancellara today and what time he went off, well, the news is that he's stepped off, and much like Mark Cavendish, he's no longer part of the Tour de France. Slightly surprised by that, David, or do you think, you know, he had to get Switzerland out of the way and that was a big deal for him, but now, well, this doesn't suit him, and what is there left?
No, I think that's a completely reasonable decision on his part, especially as he knows how best to prepare for a time trial like the Olympics, a one-day time trial. He used to often do it at the Vuelta a España, where he'd pull out on the second rest day and not do the final week in order to go back, recover, and actually be able to fit in some training, some speed training before the World Championships, and it served him well, as we know, many times. So it's yeah, I think it's if he wants to try and win and compete against Tom Dumoulin at the Olympics, then this is what he has to do.
If you're Bauke Mollema, what do you feel about that? He's got a rider in second place in the general classification, and Cancellara still has a job to do in the team.
No, I think these next 2 days, Fabian Cancellara wouldn't be able to contribute much. So they will have discussed that, and Bauke Mollema would have understood completely. And no doubt it was on the cards since the beginning of the race. You're better to have a Fabian Cancellara for 2 weeks and miss out the last few days than not have him at all.
600 metres to go for Rafa Majka until we get a first time check from him. The best of anybody at the first time check was, of course, Tom Dumoulin. He stopped the clock at 11:42. So Rafa Majka now has a minute to do 500 metres, which on the face of it would seem exceptionally easy. The problem is they're all uphill.
He'd need to be going 30 kilometres an hour and he's going 11, so it's going to be quite difficult to do that.
Simple maths.
We're good at simple maths, aren't we?
It's when it gets complicated, that's where we fall down. Now, there was rain forecast last night for today. Thunderstorms, in fact, for the afternoon and early evening. But so far, it's holding off. But it's incredibly humid. And that would be a factor if that does suddenly cloud over, as it can do in the mountains, and start to rain on the race. That would be good news for Tom Dumoulin, bad news for everybody else.
That's often time trials are decided in that way, and especially in stage races and Grand Tours, because there's such a massive separation from the first rider off to the last rider, so weather conditions can change massively.
Here's a man who does not lack in motivation. Jarlinson Pantano absolutely made up with his second place and his Prix de la Combativité yesterday. And of course, still celebrating his fantastic stage win on stage 15. A Colombian for IM Cycling. He'll be motivated, but he'll also be pretty tired after 2 big days out in breakaways. Still, he'll be absolutely flying emotionally. Now, does he wear his red dossard even though it's a time trial for the Combativité?
He would normally wear it. Actually, I'm not sure. Sometimes they don't, because often we'll see it the day after the time trial they'll be wearing it. So
because there's none awarded on the time trial.
No, so I never really got my head around that. So he's wearing an ice vest here for Romain Bardet. So that's something that's some riders like, others don't. So I've used them in the past, and sometimes it can be a bit too much for a shock, but it does. It's not. It's a very personal thing.
That little graphic that just popped up on your screen was Romain Bardet pre-Tour de France haircut, wasn't it? We haven't all had a Tour de France haircut, but the one thing I've got in common with Romain Bardet, the only thing I've got in common with Romain Bardet is I've had to have a haircut during the Tour de France. There used to be a barber's in the Village Départ, didn't there? Oh, there we go. That's answered our question. Yeah. So he is wearing the red dossard. Now, David, there used to be a barber's in the Village Départ, and it's obviously been reintroduced.
It has been reintroduced. I could never. It was there a few years when I was there, and then, yeah, like you said, for a few years it disappeared, but they brought it back in.
Did you ever take advantage of it?
No, I didn't. I tended to crew cut my hair a lot of the time.
I seem to remember Bradley Wiggins, actually, coming to the Tour with quite long hair and then getting a crew cut mid-tour. I might have misremembered that. Back in the Village Départ.
Makes you feel serious, like you're a racer.
A lot of riders do that, actually. TJ Van Garderen, I think it was last year's Tour de France, got himself absolutely shaved, didn't he? And Chris Froome invariably cuts his hair very, very short mid-tour, especially when it gets hot. So, Pantano is out and running, and this man is, I hesitate to say warming up, because he's actually trying to cool down his upper body, but get those legs ready for the effort.
It's the ice sock going in, inside the cool vest. So, each teams have different ways. We'd actually do it a lot when I was with, well, it's called Cannondale with my team. We'd actually just put ice towels in, so they'd have an ice chest filled with ice water and towels inside it, and then they just pull them out and put them on your back, and then once it was warmed up, take it off, put it back in, and replace it with another one. But we'd only really use that when it was over 30, 35 degrees during the warm-up, because that's when it really was detrimental to heat your body, your core up beyond.
You're looking at the Mont Blanc Massif, over 4,000 meters in altitude, and that is snow that never melts. 23 meters thick, even in the summer, at its thickest.
It's going to be interesting to see Jarlinson, Pantano, some of these riders that we see, and we'll keep seeing a recurring theme when it comes to each day in the mountains of the same riders going up the road. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Pantano going again the next 2 days. And because of that, you have to ask yourself, well, he has to ask himself whether it's worth going deep today and whether he uses this as a semi-recovery day. Although, as you said, as he rolled off, he is a rider that just seems to attack everywhere. So he might just be feeling, if he's feeling good, he'll just go out there and enjoy it and hurt himself all the same.
Well, that's the glory of getting yourself a stage win. Well, it wasn't early in the Tour de France, but it's in the bag, it's in the locker, it's there on his Wikipedia page. So it's job done, isn't it? And everything else that he can do on the Tour after that is a huge bonus, and that must be a tremendously liberating thing psychologically. Yeah, it is. Once you get to that third week as well, if you're in the feeling good all the time, then it's something that you know you can hold to the end. So it does become a lot of good fun, whereas for some guys the third week can be a horror. Vincenzo Nibali is still in the Tour de France, and he's still attacking this time trial. He's not going to win it. He's going to be posting a good time. It might well be enough to be top 4 or 5 provisionally, with loads of big riders still to come, but it's a good effort from Vincenzo Nibali, and once again this is a training block in some ways for his Olympic ambitions, I'm sure of that. It's a good workout for Vincenzo Nibali. Stops the clock 32.06, and he's good enough for provisional 5th place at the moment. And that's a respectable time, and it's good to see a rider of his stature not just rolling through this and going through the motions. He really did seem to go out there and give it a go. Well, every Tour de France throws up a few new names. He's not a new name, Jarlinson Pantano. He's been in the World Tour peloton for a number of years. But if this is the only race you watch all year long, he may not have been a household name to you now. If you've been watching over the last few days, though, he will have made an impact, I'm sure, on you and on the Tour de France. We're with Jarlinson Pantano. We need to take a short break, though. What is going through the mind of this man? Richie Porte has looked supremely strong in the mountains and is riding that unfortunate puncture on stage 2, stage by stage, out of his system. He has absolutely wrestled leadership of the BMC GC effort, Richie Porte. especially after the collapse, essentially, of TJ Van Garderen's Tour de France last year, where the lights went out and the American threw in the towel, effectively, losing huge amounts of time. So, just about 5 or 6 minutes before Geraint Thomas goes. He goes at 3:19. After that, well, you might be interested in Dan Martin at 3:35. Richie Porte, the man we were just looking at 3:44. After that, 3-minute intervals to Romain Bardet. Nairo Quintana in 4th place in the general classification going into this decisive, potentially, time trial. Adam Yates still in a podium place, but with a chance, perhaps even, to improve his position by 1. Bauke Mollema, in many ways the unexpected package on this year's Tour de France. How will he fare? And Chris Froome, well, we kind of know what to expect from the yellow jersey on the form he's got. Can he replicate the kind of performance we've seen repeatedly, almost daily, on the Tour de France from the yellow jersey so far? We're back with Jarlinson Pantano. He's got 300 metres before we find out how well he's going. He's not going to set the best time, but it's not bad. Tom Dumoulin went through the first time check at 11:42, and no one has come close to that time just yet, and Pantano won't either. But he is attacking the time trial, and he's going okay. More that can be said for Rafa Majka, who went through the second split time at the King of the Mountains in the low 30s in terms of position at the intermediate time check, so Rafa Majka won't be winning anything today. Helicopter is gorging itself on these extraordinary peaks in the Mont Blanc Massif. And here's TJ Van Garderen. He's the next man off. Man we're just talking about. David, it's uncomfortable sometimes, isn't it, to see a rider of his stature have such a bad day yesterday. I mean, as I said, the lights just went out on him so suddenly.
Just went out, and we can already see it doesn't look like, I think he's already signed himself off to Richie Porte. Now look at that, just straight away he's almost telling everybody, I'm not taking this seriously, I'm going to take this quite easy. He's not even, normally you'd expect TJ Van Garderen to be on his full TT setup. He is a specialist, but you can see he's barely got his mouth open, and often that's what a big rider will do when they shut it down. They always almost over egg it a bit so that everybody's aware that they're not pushing hard.
This isn't proper. This is just me rolling around. That's the message that TJ Van Garderen probably will be sending out between here and Paris. And in his career, he's just going to have to go again, isn't he? Regroup, think about things, realign his targets, decide which races to go for and to target. But the Tour de France, once again, has not really happened for TJ Van Garderen.
No, it hasn't, and he puts an enormous amount of pressure on himself, and which is normal when you're in his position. You've got a lot of responsibilities as team leader, as co-team leader with Richie Porte, and the expectations come from the fact he's already been in the top 5 twice at the Tour de France, and as a very young man, that's a massive. Those are massive results, and I think he's just felt the pressure a little bit too much to replicate them or better them.
Steph Clement is up and running. He's had an aggressive Tour de France, seen plenty of him, and he's riding pretty high in the general classification. He's gone off 4 minutes before the man we were just talking about, TJ Van Garderen. Ilnur Zakarin, now how's he faring? This is the second time check, and he's such a skinny climber. Yesterday's stage winner, of course. Time trialing not his thing, but climbing definitely his thing. So let's see how he fares. It's not approaching anything like as good as Tom Dumoulin. We're going to say that a few times before the end of today. But well, it's okay. He'll go through with 7 kilometres remaining, and he'll be top 10, will he? Or thereabouts, Ilnur Zakarin?
Well, he came through the first time check in 24th place at 52 seconds to Tom Dumoulin, so I think it's unlikely that he'll be moving up. Although it has been a hard section since then, but let's remember he did a massive day yesterday, and he'll be feeling that, and there's no doubt that will have effect on his performance today.
There's a hilly time trial in the Giro d'Italia in the pouring rain in the Chianti region. Up and down all day it was there, pouring with rain, and Ilnur Zakarin had a couple of mechanicals and a couple of spills, and he just had one of those horror days on a time trial that you occasionally see afflicting climbers. And he crosses the second time check in 25th place, fully 1 minute and 38 seconds down on the time of Tom Dumoulin. Now, Matt Rendell has joined us. Matt, you've been crunching numbers and working on spreadsheets all morning in anticipation for your role as the rest of this race progresses. We were just talking about Richie Porte and his leadership in BMC. He will find himself now, not just today, but over the next coming days, just rising up through the general classification and making good on that puncture and the time losses he suffered way back on stage 2. He's riding very strongly. What are his immediate targets, do you think, today, and what can he improve on?
Well, I think he's got a rivalry, obviously, within the team with TJ Van Garderen, who's twice been 5th in the GC of the Tour de France. Be sweet for Richie, wouldn't it, if he could get inside the top 4 or even on the podium. He sits at the moment targeting Romain Bardet's 5th place in GC, just 12 seconds away from him, and then Nairo's 4th place, exactly 1 minute away. And looking over his shoulder is Valverde, who's very good at this sort of TT. Valverde started this morning 52 seconds behind Richie.
Geraint Thomas in the start house, still high up in the general classification. Little wave to camera. The image of Thomas has been one of the images of recent tours. He's such a familiar face on the Tour de France. Always competitive, always hard-working, always at the service, seemingly, of the yellow jersey of Chris Froome. But he might just harbour ambitions of his own today. Let's see how he goes. Again, though, like Wout Poels, and like most of, we understand, the Team Sky domestiques, even though they're packed with climbing intent and could go well in this time trial today, he's not riding a full aero time trial bike. He's just got clip-on aero bars and a normal road bike. Aero helmet on. Let's see how Geraint Thomas goes. What do you expect, David, from him today?
Well, again, I think it's not really, unless he feels suddenly he's on a flyer and he can challenge for the win, then yes, of course, go for it. But I think he's in a position where he should economise and get through it, doing as little damage to himself as possible, in order that he can contribute to the team's help and work for Chris Froome.
Geraint Thomas often running and looking very smooth. Steph Clement, it has to be said, not looking quite as smooth. Some of the reason for that, though, might be explained by the fact that he's on these horrible steep slopes. 11.2 kilometres to go for Steph Clement, and they're going to hurt. It's hot and it's fast, and none has gone faster so far than Tom Dumoulin. Who could possibly beat the Dutchman? We'll find out soon. Just over half an hour before this man will roll off the start ramp. The final time trial of the Tour de France. Will it be decisive again for Chris Froome? Everything has gone his way so far on the Tour de France. And even when it hasn't, as I say, everything's gone his way, he's found a way of turning it to his favour. Running up Mont Ventoux springs to mind. An extraordinary Tour de France from a remarkable athlete this is turning into be. There he is, warming up. Chris Froome, concentrated. I wonder what music he plugs in. I have no idea what Chris Froome might listen to. What would your thoughts be there, David?
I actually have absolutely no idea. Maybe some hardcore West Coast rap or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe.
You can actually see on the back, because these speed suits, skin suits are so thin, you can see the taping that he's put on the back underneath. It's that's sort of physio tape that's to support the back slightly because the position is so extreme. I'm not sure whether he'd use it all the time, whether he uses it when he's on the road racing on his road bike, but it's definitely, Bradley Wiggins used to do it a lot. He used to have his back completely taped up for time trials.
Geraint Thomas, though, his old mucker, is up the road. 11.3 kilometres to go for Geraint Thomas. What's he trying to get out of today, do you think, Matt?
Well, I think get through it. He's 15th in GC. He's only 9 seconds ahead of Pierre Rolland, so he'll have him to think about. But to move up 1 place in GC, Geraint would have to make up 5 minutes and 35 seconds on his teammate Sergio Luis Henao, which isn't going to happen. And to jump up to 13th place, he'd have to ride this time trial 9 minutes 56 faster than Sebastian Reichenbach.
Damiano Caruso just went really well there and definitely attacked that time trial. And David Miller, that might well be because riders like Caruso, for a team like BMC, they've got the team classification in mind.
No, exactly. There's 3 teams battling it at the moment. Movistar, who are leading it, Team Sky in second place at 2 minutes 20. BMC are still within reach at 14 minutes 48, but that will require them going hard now, having to designate 3 riders today who will go hard. And it might be the case as well, Team Sky. Look at this, you can see here the asymmetric ring that Chris Froome uses. I actually used to use that as well for 2 or 3 seasons. It's a very particular thing. Some riders it suits well, others I think Chris Froome's actually the only rider in the peloton at the Tour de France who's using that ring. But it's something that when you first get on it feels horrible. It feels like you're pedaling a cam, well, it is a cam effectively, very punched, so it ends up very punchy. pedal stroke. But once you become accustomed to it, it feels smooth. And when you go back onto round rings, it feels like you're riding oval rings because you've become so adapted to it.
Does it feel markedly, it feels that different? I mean, there'll be very, very
different.
few people watching who've ever had the opportunity to ride one of those rings, and it looks to the naked eye like a fluid pedal movement.
It takes about a week to adapt to it, for it to then feel like you're pedaling a circular chainring. Because once you're adapted to it, you don't notice it at all. But then you come off it and you go on a circular chainring, and that feels oval because your pedal strokes become so different.
Don't see it so often. Bradley Wiggins was one of the riders who set a bit of a trend way back in 2012, and Chris Froome is holding on to that asymmetric chainring. You can see there a nice circular chainring though for Joaquim Rodriguez. He's gone full aero.
That's very interesting, Joaquim Rodriguez to be running full aero, because he's not a time trial specialist. You can see by the size of him, he's a pure climber. And as you see, his teammate Zakharin, who is more of a specialist, he's actually gone for a road bike. So each rider has their own style and own taste regards what they want to use.
Just see Ilnur Zakharin from Katusha, and a stage winner on the Tour de France over the line. He's nowhere near the time of Tom Dumoulin, and it's okay from Zakharin, but if you thought he might be an outsider for a mountain time trial, think again. I mean, maybe some of the efforts of that enormous stage win yesterday will be still in his legs.
I don't think he knew where the finish line was. It looked like he just kept riding.
Well, he negotiated that corner safely, and that's good news for Ilnur Zakharin. Yeah, his teammate Joaquim Rodriguez, Matt, what's he after today, do you think?
Well, he is just 3 seconds shy of Roman Kreuziger in 11th place. Purito Rodriguez is in 12th. So that is certainly a target. He's 59 seconds behind Louis Meintjes. So he's got some targets ahead of him.
Hence, maybe the choice of bike. Shows a bit of intent from Joaquim Rodriguez in his final Tour de France. But if you want intent, look at the face of Tom Dumoulin. Fantastic stage win on a high mountain in Andorra Arcalis to get his Tour de France up and running, and then he just blew everyone away in the first individual time trial. Has he done the same today? Well, the margin of 41 seconds at the moment to Thomas de Gendt suggests maybe, possibly not, and the number of riders still to come, and including the yellow jersey of Chris Froome, might well take the win today. It's in the balance, isn't it?
No, it is, and it goes to show normally Tom Dumoulin would be at the GC end of the race and would be setting off with them in the last 10-15 riders. But because he had well, we don't know whether he was just taking this first part of the race slightly easy or going day on, day off, using the Tour de France primarily as preparation for the Olympics. He's not in the GC race, but it does mean we have a GC racer who's set off earlier. And the only people who can compete with him in a time trial like this will be Chris Froome, Richie Porte.
A young South African in the start house. Next man off, Louis Meintjes, riding these days for Lampre Merida, leading the GC ambitions of Lampre Merida and doing just fine, thank you. He's been holding on to that group of favourites on the big climbs, increasingly convincingly, marking the white jersey most of the time of Adam Yates. I don't think he's going to threaten Adam Yates really for the white jersey unless Yates somewhere along the line on the next 3 days has a spectacularly bad day, but Meintjes has done himself a great deal of credit.
And there's a tight battle now. We're in the top 10. Meintjes is 10th in GC, and between him, Dan Martin, Fabio Aru and Valverde, there are 48 seconds, so a very tight clump of riders there, and every second will be important. Very prestigious, of course, to be in the top 10, so they want to both defend their positions and move up if they can.
Single figures always look better than double figures, don't they? When you look back through your season, David, when you look at the websites that list your achievements, it's nice to see a 9. It just looks better than a 10 or an 11.
Yes, it does. And surprisingly hard to get as well. It's top 10s in any World Tour race is quite an achievement.
And that's sometimes misunderstood or not understood by the non-professional watching public, that these things matter. I mean, not everyone can win the Tour de France, not everyone can get on the podium, for heaven's sake. So, I mean, there are 198 riders, and if you can get yourself in top 10, that is a major deal for a lot of riders.
No, exactly, and the level is so high. I mean, it always has been, but these days it seems higher. There's such a tiny difference between 10th and 1st, really. And, but once you're up there in those top 10 battling it out, there really is such tiny little things that make the difference.
Louis Meintjes finished in...
bike change. So,
right, so he's
I'm not sure there's a strategy or whether no, he's on the climb. So I don't think that would have been. Actually, no, you know what? It would have been. I think it would have been.
He's negotiated the first 3.5 kilometres on the TT bike, and that looked absolutely pre-planned because now the climbing starts. So that's the first time we've seen that tactic adopted. It might be the only time we see that tactic adopted. But it's interesting. How many seconds would that have cost him, do you think, David?
Probably about, they worked it out, I think probably about 10 seconds. Which, to be fair, that he probably did benefit from that on the flat section. And he'll have waited until the steepest part of the climb to do the stop, so when he was at the lowest speed, because then that equates to losing the least time. So that's clearly what he's done.
Well, I remember seeing that for the first time, a bike change in the middle of an individual time trial. It was the 2013 Tour de France, Chris Froome's first win on that mountain time trial, where they swapped bikes for the descent. So they went the opposite way, if you like. They had a road bike, and then they jettisoned the road bike, got on a TT bike. And there are some people who think that's slightly unethical, actually.
No, I don't think so. I think you've got the equipment, so...
That's within the rules, but should it be? Dan Martin is the next man off the start ramp on his first real general classification adventure on the Tour de France, and so far so good. He's been attacking in the high mountains. When he attacks, though, he loses a little bit of time sometimes, but maybe he takes that in, factors it in. He's still riding high in the general classification. This will suit him a little bit better today. He's in a group of tightly packed riders, and with a good time trial on today's steep slopes that will play into the capabilities of the Irishman. He could improve his standings. It is baking hot here in Sallanches. As you can see, people using every opportunity to cool down. I'm sure the riders would like to be doing just that, but the suffering continues for them and our enjoyment continues. The big names still to come. Flanked by two gendarmes pushing through these big crowds on the road today, Louis Meintjes is within a kilometre of the first time check. Meanwhile, about to roll down the ramp is a man who lost a bit of time and found himself slipping down the general classification yesterday. Has he recovered? Will he try and attack today? We're about to find out. Alejandro Valverde, former Spanish time trial champion, of course, and a winner of time trials on the Dauphiné in the past. Perhaps in the latter years of his long and slightly checkered career, it has to be said. Not everyone's cup of tea, given his associations in the past, Alejandro Valverde, but still a racer and almost getting stronger as the years go by rather than weaker. Rode the Giro d'Italia this year and finished on the podium, his first ever participation on this race. And here he is on the more familiar roads of the Tour de France. So where one rider is coming surely towards the end of their career, are we looking at a rider who will be a name for the future, right at the very top end of the general classification? Louis Meintjes, South African rider from Lampre Merida, is having a tilt at the top 10. Climbing continues, and it's a little bit overcast now. The forecast rain has held off so far, but it's so humid and you couldn't rule it out. 3 minutes and 14 seconds down he is, and the white jersey of Adam Yates. So I don't think that jersey will be changing hands today, unless everything falls apart for Adam Yates. Still to come after Alejandro Valverde on the start ramp. Well, next man up is Richie Porte. And big things are expected of him today, as Warren Barguil, a teammate of Tom Dumoulin, approaches the finishing line. Now, he really came unstuck yesterday. He had a really bad fall with Gorka Izagirre, who actually had to abandon. So it's understandable that Warren Barguil hasn't been able to time trial, even though this course would have suited him anything like to his capabilities. 30th place at the moment. Not his day, Warren Barguil, but he'll be sore. He fell heavily on his back and ripped his racing jersey to bits yesterday. A rider who did fall even more heavily than him yesterday was Shane Archbold. We saw him cross the line. I actually took a picture of his bike, which was snapped literally in two. Steph Clement comes into finish, and that's a good time from the Dutchman for Iron Cycling. No, but Shane Archbold, well, his bike was smashed to bits, and so too, sadly for Shane Archbold, was Shane Archbold. Fractured his pelvis, and he won't be able to start today. But what a brave ride to actually complete that stage yesterday, David.
Yeah, that was a very big crash he had, and it wasn't an easy stage either. Those final two climbs must have been must have been horrible for him if he was in that much, which, well, he would have been in a horrible amount of pain. So hats off to him for at least finishing. This is Tour de France, and that's what it's about. Finishing is as important as winning often.
Fabio Aru is on the road, the Astana team leader. And now we get a first glimpse today of Richie Porte. This really will play to his capabilities today. 10 seconds to go before Richie Porte rolls off and attacks this final individual time trial. He has the genuine prospect, the realistic ambition of moving himself up the general classification today, and he'll be burning with ambition to do just that. Richie Porte, make no doubt about it, wants a place on the podium in Paris. He's still got fire in his belly after the misfortune, the injustice of that puncture early on in the Tour de France, and he is motivated to make good on that time. Not gone though, David, as you're pointing out to me now, for the with the full aero helmet.
No, no disc wheel, no full TT bike. So we know the fastest time on Tom Dumoulin, he did that on full TT setup, and Richie Porte's gone for a real climbing TT setup. So with his normal road bike, probably a lighter version, with the deep section wheels, but not even very deep. They're quite shallow. And then no aero helmet either. So an interesting and different tactic used by Richie Porte than to the one used by Tom Dumoulin.
It's a whole hodgepodge of different bits of kit and different attitudes and different approaches here. And even within Romain Bardet's outfit there, you can see he's wearing an aero skin suit. He's got an aero helmet on, but looks like he's opting for the road bike too.
Well, I think that's just his warm-up bike.
Yeah,
I think next to it was.
Till we see.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't see whether he would actually be using a TT bike or road bike with clip-ons.
Meanwhile, Fabio Aru, Matt Rendell, we saw Joaquin Rodriguez changing his bike, and Aru was involved in a quite significant individual time trial where another rider in that time trial changed his bike to great effect.
Yeah, he was second in the mountain time trial on Cima Grappa in the 2014 Giro d'Italia, 17 seconds adrift of the winner, Nairo Quintana. More than half of Nairo's margin of victory that was gained on the flat before the climb started. He changed bikes and helmets in a very choreographed move at the foot of the climb that day. Aru started the day 8th overall today, 32 seconds ahead of Louis Meintjes, 15 seconds ahead of Dan Martin, with Valverde right in his sights, 16 seconds ahead of him.
But it's very interesting to see which policies riders have opted for. Only one rider we've seen actually swapping the bike so far, and that was after 3.5 or so kilometres before he hit the steep part of the climbs that Fabio Aru is on now, and that was Joaquin Rodriguez. Richie Porte's gone full climber with a vented helmet and a conventional road bike. Fabio Aru has an aerodynamic helmet, but he's on a conventional road bike as well. Chris Froome, as we understand it, will do the full Tom Dumoulin. That's what we understand to see. He will have a proper TT bike, and he will be in an aerodynamic skin suit. We know that much, and an aero helmet.
That will be interesting to see, because if there's one team out there that we know will have crunched all the numbers and figured it out, the science, then it's Team Sky. So the equipment that Chris Froome will use will no doubt be actually the fastest equipment.
The nation of France, the cycling nation, the host country, could do with a big ride from this man. Romain Bardet carries their hopes on his slight shoulders. Tremendously likeable man, great athlete, full of attacking intent, almost on every stage. We have seen something like the best of Romain Bardet on this Tour de France so far. He's not yet been on the podium of the Tour, though. 2014 was his closest effort. In the end, though, a teammate of his, Jean-Christophe Perrault, sprung into second place on the podium, and Thibaut Pinot took up third place on the podium. That was a strong Tour de France for him. Can Bardet make a big impact on the race today? Will he go well today? And can he take time on his rivals? What does Bardet have to do, Matt, today to fulfill those ambitions?
Well, he starts the day 5th overall. He is only 12 seconds ahead of Richie Porte, and he is 48 seconds off Nairo Quintana, who is in 4th place. 1 minute and 52 seconds separate him from Adam Yates and the bottom step of the podium.
And there is the conundrum. And that is the unstoppable force at the moment. The two men we anticipated to do serious battle for the ultimate honour in Paris. Well, Chris Froome, as things stand, has dispensed with Nairo Quintana, and Quintana is left looking up the minor prizes and the possibility of getting himself on the podium. But if he's going to do that, he needs to deliver a fabulous time trial today. He did okay in the first individual time trial, Nairo Quintana. He limited his losses, this parkour much more to his liking, but it's much more to Richie Porte's liking too, and Romain Bardet.
Romain Bardet, you can see he's actually used the aero helmet and the aero bars, but on a road frame, so he's gone for another mixed match. If the shots guns down a bit, you'll see. But what Richie Porte, the advantage he has, although he's in a road bike setup with the clip-on bars, his position is almost identical to what it is on his TT bike. So he hasn't actually compromised his body's aerodynamics. It's only the aerodynamics of the equipment that he's ended up compromising here. But he's probably got a much lighter feel to that bike. It will feel like it dances up the climbs, contrary to a TT bike, which feels like you're lugging something up a climb.
Colombian fans have not deserted Nairo Quintana. His country will be imploring him to deliver a big result today. They'll be living with deep disappointment. Their hopes so far have come to nothing for that elusive Tour de France win for Nairo Quintana that many people are assuming will happen almost as a given one day. So far, though, it's just been frustration for Quintana, and no one knows quite why. They'll still believe. Quintana himself might still believe. So hard to read what's going on behind that poker face. Big ride this for Quintana. Got a point to prove. So far, he's not managed to prove how good he is on the Tour de France and what all the hype is about. This has not been a vintage year so far for Nairo Quintana, but he's got 17 kilometers and then 2 more Alpine stages after today to prove that he is still the future Tour de France winner that we know, that we expected him to be on this edition of the Tour de France, to push Chris Froome every inch of the way, to grow in strength in the final week of the Tour de France. Instead, he's looked increasingly weak, and Froome looks stronger and stronger. Can Quintana, though, we know he has he is the rider with the capability to do this. Can he turn tables on his form, prove himself and the rest of us who are beginning to doubt him on this edition of the Tour completely wrong? Can Quintana produce the ride of his life? 17 kilometers, mostly uphill. This is home territory for Nairo Quintana. And this is far from home territory for the white jersey of Adam Yates. He's never been in anything like this kind of position in his young career to date. Mind you, he's barely started. Not that long since he was a neo-pro, Adam Yates, and a totally new name in the World Tour peloton. But he is in a podium place at the moment on the Tour de France and in the white jersey. So many riders, though, trying to prize that white jersey away from one. Not necessarily the white jersey, but the podium place away from him. And Richie Porte is one of them.
It has to be said, Richie Porte is arguably one of the best, if not the best, time trialist, uphill time trialist, even perhaps better than Chris Froome. We've seen him win Col d'Huez twice in Paris-Nice, and a race that Geraint Thomas won this year, which was a massive achievement.
Geraint Thomas approaching the finish line. He has attacked the course, not with 100% commitment, but he has not ridden within himself, and he's going to post a very respectable time as he comes around that last left-hander and lines himself up for the finishing straight on a conventional road bike. Hasn't gone full aerodynamics, and you can tell from his expression as well that Geraint Thomas was committed, perhaps not fully good enough for provisional 12th place as things stand. So a decent ride from Geraint Thomas, and important for him in the team classification. But just looking at that expression, there's barely a drop of sweat on his face, and that was just an average day out for Geraint Thomas by the looks of it. What a talented rider he is. Might well have improved his standings in the general classification as well by the end of the day. So Bardet is up and running. 5 minutes 24 seconds into his efforts. Quintana behind him is also on the road. Just 2 riders still to go, and here's one of them. What is this moment like, David?
It can be, it depends on the sort of the state of mind you're in and how well prepared you are for the time trial. And this probably wasn't a position Adam expected to be in at this point in the race. So whether he'd done all the reconnaissance that other riders will have done before the Tour de France. So this is going to be nerve-wracking for him, there's no doubt about that.
He's got Nairo Quintana breathing down his neck. He's got Bauke Mollema dangling in front of him as a carrot. Maybe the yellow jersey of Chris Froome is an unrealistic, a distant prospect. Maybe Froome's race is a race all of his own that the guys cannot touch. But Adam Yates is off and running, and this is another big 17 kilometers in the astronomically quick acceleration that this man's career is going through over the 3 weeks of the Tour de France. His aspirations have been exceeded already, probably, but he wants more. He's that kind of rider, and Yates will stop at nothing to achieve his ambitions of getting onto that podium in Paris. That's where he wants to head, and today's ride will inform his prospects. So just a reminder of how things stand. Nairo Quintana has a disadvantage to Adam Yates of 34 seconds. And Adam Yates has 26 seconds to make up on Bauke Mollema, the second to last rider off today.
It'll be interesting to see if Nairo Quintana makes a bike change here, as he did, as Joaquim Rodriguez did, because Joaquim Rodriguez, although he had that bike change, finished third at that first time check, so only 15 seconds down on Tom Dumoulin. So that actually has worked out as quite a good tactic for him, because I think he'd have lost a lot of time if he'd been on his road bike on that flat section before. At the moment, Fabio Aru's done a good time as well. He's in fourth of that first time check, 16 seconds down on Tom Dumoulin. So as the GC riders are starting to come through, for the first time we're seeing times that are getting closer to Tom Dumoulin.
Dan Martin's going okay. He's going to go through, after 10 kilometres of racing, the second time check fairly soon. And he's bouncing around a little bit in that saddle. He's holding nothing back. He can't afford to in terms of his GC ambitions. 53 seconds down on the time of Tom Dumoulin. 7th place provisionally for Dan Martin.
I'd say that's a very good result for the second time trial. Let's say the last time trial on the Tour de France, where Dan Martin is and his previous track record in time trials. That's an outstanding result, and he should be very satisfied with that.
Ice on the back of his neck, collecting his thoughts. Chris Froome won't be long before we see him on the road. Bauke Mollema still to come. Romain Bardet, though, is on the steeper section, 12% the gradient at the moment. 900 metres before we get an indication of how well Romain Bardet is going. Now, what about this man, Bauke Mollema? Finished 6th in the first individual time trial. That was a very good result. It was a flatter time trial, though, and perhaps that suited Bauke Mollema slightly more than today's pretty much pure climbing effort. This is uncharted territory for Bauke Mollema too. You can say that of so many riders on this Tour de France, but most significantly, Mollema and Yates find themselves in 3rd and 2nd place on the Tour de France. And this is a really big day for Bauke Mollema too. Trek Segafredo man has found unprecedented form, really. Certainly he wasn't a name on anybody's lips going into the Tour de France in terms of the podium, but he certainly is now, and he's there on merit. One of the strongest climbers. He's shown his form repeatedly in the Pyrenees and in the Alps, and now he's got to do it on a hilly time trial with 3 more days of racing remaining after today. Fabio Aru's holding nothing back, and let's have a look at his time at 10 kilometres, approaching the second split point, the time check. After 10 kilometres, that's the time of Tom Dumoulin, you can see there. No one's going to get close to that, I don't think, unless Chris Froome can. 18:49 was the time of Dumoulin, and it's just slipped out of reach for Fabio Aru. He's still got a little while to go before he posts his time at the second time check, but that looks like it's a good ride from Aru, and certainly the body language suggests he's holding nothing back. You wouldn't expect him to. Aru's looked a little bit stronger as this Tour de France has gone on, repeatedly setting his team up to attack Team Sky. A sign perhaps of his confidence, and he stops the clock just 23 seconds down on Tom Dumoulin. That's provisional 2nd place.
And we just got through from the first time check, Richie Porte, 11:33. So that's 9 seconds faster than Tom Dumoulin. So that's, and we're seeing now all the climbers are actually doing very respectable times, which just goes to show how hard this time trial is.
Let's have a look at Joaquim Rodriguez now on the finishing straight. How has he gone? He swapped a bike. He went full TT bike mode for the flatter section, then got onto his conventional road bike because he knew the climbs were coming. And Joaquim Rodriguez, that's a really good ride from Perito. He stops the clock and he'll be in provisional 4th place at the moment, so that might be a really good day for Rodriguez by the time the general classification sorts itself out at the end of the day. A tactic that paid off. Clever thinking.
No, it has, and it's worked very well for him, because the flat is an area where he does suffer massively, so he would get benefits from using the area. Whereas Richie Porte, he's gone for his mixed bike, his basically a climbing bike with the TT bar additions. There's nothing really else special to it. But you can see there on the time check, that's the first time check after 6.5 kilometres, that for the first time Tom Dumoulin's been challenged, and not just challenged, beaten.
So he is once again attacking the first part of an individual time trial with total venom. Richie Porte. Mind you, he did that on the last individual time trial, and in the end it blew up in his face somewhat, so let's just wait to see how he fares at the second time check. Meanwhile, the yellow jersey, well, he's been here so many times in the past. A wave and a thumbs up from Chris Froome, and the clock will begin to count down. He lives with the pressure, Chris Froome, of the yellow jersey. Only a very, very select band of riders have ever worn the yellow jersey on as many occasions as Chris Froome has. And this is another very important day if he wants to hold this jersey all the way to Paris. The general consensus around this race, in France, in the press, in the media, pretty much across the world, is that Chris Froome is on a victory march already, and he can virtually start celebrating his win. It appears that nobody can get close to him, but he won't be feeling that. He just knows that he has to get the job done today and take advantage of his ability on the climbs and as a time trialist. Both of those disciplines in cycling are well within the compass of Chris Froome. That's why he's such a great stage racer. That is why he's already won the Tour de France twice. Romain Bardet passes under 10 kilometres to go, but all the riders are out on the road now. Chris Froome has begun his 17-kilometre time trial. Let's see how he goes. Will there be a stage win to take home after today for the Team Skyman? Adam Yates is out on the road, and so too is Nairo Quintana. Yates is closing in on the first time check, and we should get news of that fairly soon. Nairo Quintana, meanwhile, well, he is 9.2 kilometres to go.
I think I caught a glimpse of the clock, and it's at 11:37 is what I saw, which means he's gone faster than Tom Dumoulin in that first section, which is a fairly scintillating pace, to be honest. That's amazing.
Well, Richie Porte has set the best time so far at the first time check, but he lost a bit of time to Tom Dumoulin at the second time check, around about 9 seconds. So he had a 9-second advantage over Dumoulin at the first time check and a 9-second disadvantage at the second time check. But he's riding a road bike, and we suspect that might have had something to do with it. Meanwhile, Chris Froome is 6 minutes 25 seconds into his effort, and he's got he's got about 1.4k before we get an idea of how he is faring. And much like Dumoulin, he's going up some very, very steep sections of climbing in a full Aerotuck time trialing position on a full TT bike.
Yeah, it's impressive to watch, and only if you've really ever tried that before. They make it look so effortless, but it takes a massive amount of training and strength to be able to do that.
Bardet's closing in on the 10-kilometre marker, and this second time check, that's the time of Tom Dumoulin, 18:49. Bardet won't be threatening that, but it's important because that first section of the course will have suited him, and he will need to have taken out an advantage over his rivals on that section of climbing. We need to slip down a little bit. Provisional 4th place now, and the clock's ticking over. Still not at the timing point. Will be shortly. Let's have a look. 19:20. It'll be going out over that time. 33 seconds down on the time of Tom Dumoulin. So that's good. That's good from Bardet. Should be satisfied with that at this point.
It is respectable, and it's. Let's just see the crowds here. Amazing. This is the steepest part of the climb here, so it's, we're seeing just how strong Chris Froome is.
Right, how's Dan Martin going to fare at the finish line as he sprints for the line as well? He's got this tricky corner coming up now. Dan Martin beginning to tick over. He'll be well over a minute down on the time of Tom Dumoulin by the time he actually gets to the finish line. Let's have a look. 32 minutes, going to be over 32 minutes. So it's not perhaps the best result for Dan Martin, but he is in unheralded territory here, and a discipline that doesn't greatly suit him, even though that was a climber's parcours, he will have expected to lose a little bit of time perhaps today. 32.11, that's the time that Dan Martin has posted.
Yes, and it looks like Louis Meintjes is 2 or 3 seconds ahead now of Dan Martin in GC, and Kreuziger too has dropped a little bit of time, and Purito has replaced Kreuziger in 11th. So 9th and 10th swapping places, and 11th and 12th swapping places in GC.
And just seeing the official timings come through for Adam Yates in that first time check, and he's in 3rd place, so he's actually only 1 second behind Tom Dumoulin and 10 seconds behind Richie Porte. And now we know that's Tom Dumoulin is a time to reference, because by the second time check, Dumoulin was ahead of Richie Porte again. So that's actually the good pace that Adam Yates is on.
First glimpse of Bauke Mollema really out on the road from the helicopter. They've picked him out. Lies in 2nd place in the general classification, 2:27 down. But Bauke Mollema, well, he put 1 minute and 5 seconds into Adam Yates on stage 13, but that was on a very different kind of time trial, and it was over 37.5 kilometres. But nonetheless, Mollema's going to go well here, there's no doubt about that.
He is. You can see how different his style is to Tom Dumoulin or even Chris Froome. He's very bouncing all over the place, which we often see Bauke Mollema doing. But it seems to be quite effective at the moment. Yeah, Adam Yates he's really worked a lot in his position over the last couple of years, and as you can see, it's looking very smooth.
So confirmation there of the first timing point. As you were saying, Richie Porte's gone fastest, Dumoulin is 2nd fastest. He's already finished his race, of course, and Adam Yates in 3rd place. Now Fabio Aru's the next big GC man to come towards the line. Let's have a look at how he's going. 31, so he'll be not too dissimilar perhaps to the time of Dan Martin. By the time, no, he's going to be faster than Martin.
He's gone very fast time.
He's gone very fast. In fact, it's going to be he's going to be threatening the top 4, 5, or maybe even better than that. 2nd place, possibly, for Fabio Aru as he lines up for the sprint and stops the clock. Provisional 2nd place, 31.16. That's an excellent ride from Fabio Aru.
That has been a fantastic ride, and it goes to show he's coming good. I mean, maybe these last few days we'll see something special from Fabio Aru. We know he had the confidence yesterday because he had his team on the front, but in the end he was outplayed by Team Sky. But that's a good indication of the fact that he's not lost his strength yet.
Doesn't appear to be a good day for Nairo Quintana out there today. Look at him tumbling down the order as he approaches 10 kilometres and the 2nd time check, so it's not going to happen again for Quintana, whose miserable form by his own high standards continues on the individual time trial here. He's not going to be gaining time on anyone ahead of him, namely Yates and Mollema. He's going to be losing time, and he is seriously threatened now by he's threatened by both Romain Bardet and Richie Porte, because Quintana is shedding time to his rivals. Nothing really matters until they get to the finish, though. That was a brilliant time from Fabio Aru. And the winners in terms of the GC race at the moment are Louis Meintjes, whose ride is propelling him up the standings, and so too Fabio Aru. Bauke Mollema has gone through the first time check, 35 seconds down on the time of Richie Porte.
So that's already 25 seconds that Adam Yates has on him. So that's moves him within to second, not far off 2nd place on GC.
Yates is having a great ride. Bardet's having a decent ride too. And Chris Froome, we're going to get a notion of how well he's going very soon. He is bearing down on that first time check. So Quintana's having a miserable race. Once again, it looks as if Mollema is struggling a little bit, or he has been on the opening section of today's time trial, and Adam Yates is flying. So too, we understand, is Richie Porte. How's he bearing up on this section of the climb? And this 5% gradient. I think it's actually steeper than that at this point.
But this is right coming up to the summit now. He's only got a few hundred meters left, and then it'll plummet down to the finish line. So he's got to get everything out now, and we can see it's the first time he's out the position. He's stomping on the pedals, trying to make it, get everything, every little bit out of him, because once he gets to the top, he won't be able to make much difference on the descent.
10% gradients here, but as you say, David, he's only got 400 or 500 meters left before it starts to go steeply downhill, and he'll get himself into an aerodynamic position, and he'll go towards the finishing line as hard as he can. Approaching 10 kilometers and the 2nd split timing point, the 2nd time check. Adam Yates is having a brilliant ride out here. And he's putting time, he's taking back time on Bauke Mollema on the opening section of the course, and he is absolutely ripping into this time trial. This is a great ride from the man in the white jersey, who might well, if things go his way, find himself moving up the general classification by 1 position today. You might be looking at the end of today at Adam Yates in 2nd place on the general classification. Through 10k, he goes through, he's lost a little bit of time perhaps on this section of the course. 19-19, 19-20, 4th place at the moment and dropping. So has he lost a bit of time since that blistering first part of the course?
Well, I think he's
40 seconds. He has.
He certainly has.
He certainly has.
He came through on the same time as Tom Dumoulin, 1 second slower than Tom Dumoulin that first time check. And from that first time check to that second time check, it's he's lost a further 39 seconds. So I think it's not a case of maybe Adam Yates slowing down so much. I think maybe Tom Dumoulin sped up massively in that section as well.
It's wildly hard to read, isn't it, at the moment? It's so fluctuating out on the course. If we look at Alejandro Valverde crossing the line, he comes in at 32.01. So he's 10 seconds better off than Dan Martin, Alejandro Valverde. And everyone is jostling for position all the way down the general classification. Fabio Aru's ride looks better and better. 31.16, Fabio Aru. Of the GC men who've crossed the line so far, he is comfortably the best. But Porte, Bardet, Quintana, Yates, Mollema and Froome are still out there.
So Chris Froome's come through in 5th place at that first time check, 23 seconds down. So that's 23 seconds down on Richie Porte, who we're looking at now. And we know then Richie Porte tumbled a little bit down the, well, didn't tumble, he lost more time, lost of 20 seconds between the first time check and the second time check. And he's come through at that final time check in 2nd place, 9 seconds. So he's made time back up again. So he's attacked that climb, he finished it off well, and he managed to limit the loss of Tom Dumoulin. But he's got this can't make much difference now, but he's heading towards his 2nd place in this time trial at the moment.
Well, 2nd place is being held by Fabio Aru at the moment, 31.16, his 2nd best time at the moment. Tom Dumoulin still heads the race for the stage win, 31.04 his time, as Richie Porte goes through the kite, 30.14. So if he's going to match Aru's time, he's got a minute to get to the finishing line from here.
And Aru's put in a cracking ride. He started the day 16 seconds behind Aru. He finishes it 29 seconds ahead of Aru in GC. So fabulous ride by Aru. We've been waiting for him to come good.
Dumoulin looks a little bit anxious as he watches the pictures that we're seeing now of Richie Porte burying himself in an effort to get over that finish line. 31.04, so he's got 20 seconds to get to the finishing line and beats the time of Tom Dumoulin. This is a good ride from Richie Porte. He's got a couple of 100 metres to go. I think that Dumoulin will hang on to his best time, but this might be good enough for 2nd place. Round he goes, sweeping right-handed, and it'll be left-handed and towards the finishing line now with one more little kink to negotiate safely. Richie Porte finds himself in 2nd place at the moment. Is it going to be enough to wrestle 2nd place off Fabio Aru? I think it will be. 31.16 the time to beat there, and they're locked together. So, it was split seconds separating Richie Porte and Fabio Aru for provisional 2nd place, but Dumoulin holds on to his lead by 12 seconds.
Well, you would have thought that Chris Froome would be the rider. Chris Froome would have been actually the rider. Richie Porte, the two of them were the main competition with Tom Dumoulin in this time trial. Obviously, Bauke Mollema really is losing time to his other GC contenders at the moment. We've seen all of them go through much further, with much better time than that.
Well, Adam Yates didn't post his most impressive time at this point. He went through 40 seconds down on the time of Tom Dumoulin. And Bauke Mollema has gone through that split set of Richie Porte's time. 53 seconds down, so 13 seconds slower than Adam Yates, and there were 26 seconds separating Yates and Mollema at the start of the day. So Mollema on the road effectively has 13 seconds over Adam Yates to defend his 2nd place with. Meanwhile, what's going on with this man? Only the 5th best time at the first time check. Unusual for Froome?
It is. It is unusual for him. I know my sister is in Manchester, who works for Team Sky, watching this with her team, and I'll have to call her up and find out later. But no, I think we've seen him climbing so exceptional everywhere. Maybe he has changed his preparation slightly. He is so dominant in the mountains. Maybe he's lost something a little bit in the time trial.
He's got a huge lead in the general classification. He's got 2 minutes and 27 seconds over the man in second place. So surely, even on a bad day, if that's what Chris Froome is having, he's not in danger of holding on to his yellow jersey today. Surely that is a given that Chris Froome will continue, should he stay upright on today's stage. That he will continue in yellow, but he might just find a little bit of time nibbled away into his lead. Romain Bardet is over 30 minutes into his effort now. And he is starting to descend towards the kite. He's the next of the GC riders to come over the line. Both Fabio Aru and Richie Porte went over in 31.16. Don't think Romain Bardet will be that fast, but this is a good ride from Bardet. And descending is a thing he does.
That is his speciality.
As well as climbing. So not much of today's time trial didn't suit Romain Bardet, but racing is so different from time trialing, as you know better than anyone, David.
No, it is. It's very different. So it's different equipment as well, and you do find yourself often going a lot faster in a TT and a descent than you would in a road bike, simply because of all the aerodynamic equipment and the fact that you have the whole road to yourself.
I'll tell you what, this is really fast by Romain Bardet, though. Tom Dumoulin's going to hang on to his time. 31.16 is the next place. That belongs to Fabio Aru and Richie Porte, both crossed the line in 31.16. Bardet, well, he's not going to be in second or third place. Bardet, I think, will stop the clock and he'll be in provisional fourth place at the end of this race. So really good ride from Romain Bardet, and he'll be hurting the likes of Nairo Quintana with that time. 31.25, he stops the clock. So Quintana, unless he's recovered somewhat, will see his place threatened. Don't forget, Nairo Quintana started the day 48 seconds better off than Romain Bardet. Now, how is Chris Froome faring after 10 kilometres? The second time check reveals that he is not as fast as Tom Dumoulin. There's no great surprise in that, but how's he faring relative to the other riders? He has recovered somewhat. Well, that split time looked like a work of absolute fiction there. That looked like it suggested he was 3 minutes down. Don't believe that. So we're going to have to wait, I'm afraid, until the proper data comes off the race.
I think it was closer to 10 seconds, within 10 seconds, I think, which is interesting because that means that he's paced it slightly differently to the other riders, and that he's moving up the classification as the time checks go forward, which we do often see with Chris Froome. He has a very controlled start, and then as the others drop off, it's difficult to tell whether he speeds up or everyone else just simply starts to slow down.
Well, we understand that it just simply, for whatever reason, the glitch in the software just simply added 3 minutes. So when it said 3:0, well, yeah, it did say, I can't remember what it said. It was up there for a split second.
So I think it's 9 seconds behind. So within 10 seconds, which is, like I said, that means he's made back 14 seconds on him in those 3.5 Ks between those two time checks, which would indicate that he's speeding up during this line.
Wildly oscillating the fortunes of these riders at split times. Adam Yates set an absolutely fantastic first split time, seemed to lose a fair amount on the second split time, but so much of this is down to the nature of the parcours and the gear that they're riding in terms of the technical equipment that they're favouring to use. On the flatter sections, the TT bike comes into its own, and the conventional road bike on the steeper sections, like this section that Adam Yates is riding right now. 27.20. He'll be crossing the line in about 4 minutes or thereabouts from now, if he's on a good day. How is Yates faring? Matt, what can you offer us there?
Well, just to say that Bardet rode that time trial 9 seconds slower than Richie Porte. They started the day with 12 seconds between them, so Bardet remains virtual 5th place on the road. All depends on what happens next, of course, with Porte just about 3 seconds behind him, so very, very tight as we go into these mountain stages tomorrow and the day after.
Bauke Mollema, how has he paced his effort at the moment? He appears to be a virtual 1 minute and 2 seconds slower than Chris Froome. And, well, that's about 7 or 8 seconds slower than Adam Yates. He's got 26 seconds to defend, so Yates looks like he's eating into the advantage of Mollema, but perhaps not decisively. Nairo Quintana now is approaching the finishing funnel. Not far before he stops the clock definitively for the final time on this individual time trial. And Nairo Quintana is another rider who looks to have made good a little bit of time in the second half of today's race. He was right down the order at some of those time checks, especially at the second time check. He had dropped substantially down the pecking order, but he's recovered somewhat, and this is a decent time. He's going to be comfortably under 32 minutes, I would imagine. Still got 10 seconds to play with a sprint for the line. Quintana stops the clock in 31.53. So that's a much better result than was suggested earlier on by Quintana's split times, which were looking pretty disastrous for the Colombian. It's not the best individual time trial, but it's certainly not the worst for Nairo Quintana. Very, very hard individual time trial to read this one, I have to say.
It looks horrible.
Matt.
Well, Nairo started the day with a 1 minute advantage over Richie Porte. He ends it with 23 seconds over Porte, 20 seconds over Bardet in GC. So those two are now breathing down his neck in the overall competition.
It's scrunching up ever so tightly. So first objective is achieved, to some extent at least, for Richie Porte, who wanted to propel himself further up the GC today. And as you say, he is on Quintana's heels at the end of the day.
Now with that clock ticking in the bottom, Chris Froome, that's his time 23.45. The next time check he's approaching is the kilometre 13.5, and that's 25 minutes and 1 second is what Tom Dumoulin had as the best time there.
So Froome's on a really good day. Early suggestions were that he wasn't. Those stand corrected. He's flying. Meanwhile, look at the virtual time differences between Yates and Mollema. It's gone out a little bit, so Yates is going well at this point, so that would suggest that Yates is 12 seconds better than Mollema at the moment.
Yeah, it's staying fairly static from that second time check at the kilometre 10. So they've stabilised the distance between them. So
12-13 seconds, hovering around about there for Bauke Mollema and Adam Yates. Yates won't be long before he passes he's the next rider to post his final time over the finish. 17 kilometres of time trialling, don't forget today. It's still uphill work though for Bauke Mollema before he then heads after Adam Yates onto the final 2 kilometres of descent towards the finish line. And still 13 seconds, that's the suggestion. So if the race were to stop now, Mollema would have lost about half of his advantage in second for this battle for second place between him and Adam Yates. He would hold on to second place, but the gap would have closed. Let's wait until we get the final time though. 1 kilometre to go now for Adam Yates, and again he's risen to the occasion. He has ridden a brilliant individual time trial.
No, again, we said at the last time trial, we heard say from Matt White and others from the team that it was probably the time trial of his life, and it seems to be doing, once again he's doing a time trial of his life. Granted, this is a time trial that does suit him very well. We know he's currently one of the best climbers in the world, and this is a climber's time trial, but all the same, then to do it on the day when you're under the pressure, that's something else completely different.
Well, it's going to be perhaps within 32 minutes. It should be within 32 minutes. Don't forget, Valverde was just outside 32 minutes. Quintana was just inside 31.53, to give you an idea of how the other riders are faring. Nothing like as competitive as Aru or Porte, who are both in 31.16. And Adam Yates will be just outside 32 minutes. 32 minutes and 11 seconds was the time of Dan Martin, to give you a benchmark. I think that Yates will stop the clock inside that time. Indeed he does. 32.06. So there we have our targets to aim at. If Bauke Mollema comes in 32, let's do the math, 42, then they are locked together in the general classification. 32. Told you maths was my strong point. 32.32. That is the time that Bauke Mollema is aiming at. His 26-second disadvantage to Adam Yates. That's what it looks like now. He knows exactly what time he needs to achieve.
3 kilometres. Chris Froome is looking very strong here. We know this is one of the hard sections. This is where we see everybody else getting out the saddle from the fatigue. There's only a few hundred metres left before they plummet down into Megève, and he's still in that position. I'm sure he'll get out soon and just sprint up the last bit if he can. But to be in that position now is very impressive. So it's going to, and I'm sure Tom Dumoulin is sitting there watching this a little bit nervous.
So Chris Froome's doing another Chris Froome ride in this Tour of Triumph, stage 18. And still he distances himself from all his rivals in the general classification. He's riding better than any of the GC men on this individual time trial today, and is the only man at the finishing line, apart from Aru and Porte, who were close, but maybe, just maybe, Chris Froome will be close enough to Tom Dumoulin to get himself the win.
Kilometre 13.5, he came through with the fastest time check, 24.48. So he's put 13 seconds into Tom Dumoulin. So actually he's ridden a very conservative first few kilometres, and then he's just been smashing it since then.
Just to make it interesting for everybody, Chris Froome decided to ride within himself, it seems, and pace his effort, and then ratchet up the power all the way through to the finish line, and he's got faster rather than slower. How's Bauke Mollema faring? 32 minutes and 32 seconds. If he crosses the line there, then he will lock together with Adam Yates. The last indications we had, though, was that he'd only lost about 12 or 13 seconds to Adam Yates. And it did perhaps appear as if Yates had maybe lost a little bit of momentum and a little bit of time on the latter kilometres of this time trial today. So, where's the clock? 800 metres to go.
This is
all we know for sure.
I'm just going through the time checks here and just seeing Chris Froome. He was 5th at the first time check, then he moved up to 3rd, 10 seconds behind Tom Dumoulin. Then by the 3rd time check, he was 13 seconds ahead of Tom Dumoulin. So he's just destroyed that middle section of the time trial.
Well, there we go. That is as good an indication as you're going to get that Bauke Mollema will safely hold on to his 2nd place, and there's a chance actually that, well, 32.06 was the time of Adam Yates. So will Bauke Mollema lose any time to Yates whatsoever? They are very, very evenly matched, these two. 32 minutes now, so he's got 6 seconds to get over the line to lock together with Yates and maintain all of his advantage. He's let possibly a second just slip through his fingers, but no more than that. He stops the clock at 32.08 and loses just 2 seconds to Adam Yates. So Yates closes the gap to 24 seconds at the end of today between 3rd and 2nd place. Another good time trial by Bauke Mollema, and you have to say, another good ride by Adam Yates.
Yes, and Chris Froome in a class of his own, and he has been all the way through this Tour de France. But between Mollema and Yates for 2nd place, 24 seconds. Between Yates and Nairo Quintana for 3rd place, just 21 seconds. 20 seconds separate Bardet from Nairo. 3 seconds separate Porte from Bardet. It's all getting very close at the top for the minor positions.
It is getting close at the top for sure, and you can tell that by that rueful look from Tom Dumoulin that he's not enjoying watching Chris Froome attack the final kilometre of racing. All downhill and then a few twists and turns to negotiate. Chris Froome, a 6-time stage winner on the Tour de France. He's already won on a descent, don't forget, into Luchon before we even got to the Pyrenees. One stage of the Tour de France, and now he wants to win in the yellow jersey. Just as he did, of course, in 2013 when he won in the yellow jersey on Mont Ventoux. It belongs to his armoury. This is exactly what he likes to do. Chris Froome win a stage in the yellow jersey and dominate the field. 31.04 the time of Tom Dumoulin. Chris Froome, I think, is going to take the stage win. Not long to go now before that is confirmed. Dumoulin surely must know that the game is up, and Chris Froome has absolutely blown the field apart, and he has taken a major scalp in Tom Dumoulin here. The best time trialist has been defeated by the best stage racer of his generation, you have to say. Chris Froome has stamped his authority on this individual time trial, and increasingly he has demoralised the rest of the fields who might have dreamt at the beginning of wearing the yellow jersey. Fat chance of that happening. It belongs to Chris Froome, and his hold on it gets stronger and stronger with each passing stage. A brilliant ride from a brilliant rider.
And looking like about 3 minutes 52 now, the lead he has over Bauke Mollema. It started the day at 2:27, of course, so absolutely stamping his authority all over them.
And that was a masterclass in time trialling, with being so far behind in the first time check, 23 seconds Tom Dumoulin, then finishing 21 seconds ahead. He just paced it perfectly and kept a cool head and rode that to perfection.
It was almost like a bluff. He just bluffed a time trial. But it was a fascinating tale. Let's have a look at the confirmation here. Chris Froome takes the win by 21 seconds from Tom Dumoulin, and he takes more time over all his general classification rivals. Mollema and Yates, well, they were pretty much locked together.
Yeah, the race is tightening up nicely, isn't it? But only behind Chris Froome. He wins the stage to not put the seal, but at least add a little flourish to what is now almost certainly his 3rd Tour de France win. We'll take a break. There's Adam Yates. He nicked a couple of seconds off Bauke Mollema today. Safe in the white jersey, he's heading towards the podium for that presentation. But the man of the day is the man in the yellow jersey. Chris Froome paced it perfectly, down at the first check, up thereafter, and he has taken his second stage win of this tour to confirm what everybody knows, that he's going to win the thing overall. So there is the stage result. Chris Froome by 21 seconds from the man who led for so long, Tom Dumoulin. Fabio Aru, a very impressive third at 33 seconds. Richie Porte tied on the same time, ahead of Romain Bardet at 42 seconds. Then it was Thomas de Gendt just outside a minute. Jon Izagirre at 1:03. Joaquim Rodriguez, the only man to do a bike change. He did a good ride, 1:05. Louis Meintjes rode well too, 1:08. And Nairo Quintana at 1:10. And that leaves the top of the standings looking like this. Chris Froome now leads this race by 8 seconds shy of 4 minutes over Bauke Mollema. Adam Yates is at 4:16, so he's 24 seconds behind Mollema instead of the 26 he was this morning. Nairo Quintana's taken 13 seconds out of his deficit to Yates, though. He's at 4:37. Romain Bardet at 4:57. Richie Porte 6th at a dead even 5 minutes. Then Fabio Aru moving up to 7th at 6:08. Valverde at 8th, 6:37. Louis Meintjes moving himself up to 9th. And Dan Martin 10th. Well, all sorts of different equipment changes, all sorts of different approaches. Jens Vogt was watching it with us. Well, you weren't, you were watching it somewhere else, but you're with us now, and that's the main thing. And Chris Froome, we have to say, first of all, judged it perfectly.
Yes, he did. And he was the only rider with a full TT outfit. Skin suit, helmet, disc wheel, and a fast frame. So he did the right choice there, clearly.
Yeah, so when he went through the first check slower, were you thinking maybe he's got this wrong, or were you thinking, nah, he's paced this perfectly?
I was a little surprised how far he was back. I mean, he was something like 20 seconds back, so that is actually quite a fair amount of money. Not money, time.
Time is money.
Yes, time is money, but he came back quickly from that, so he must have planned it just like that.
OK. Now, we will get reactions from Chris Froome. He's obviously behind the podium at the moment, warming down. But we were speaking to riders as they came in. They obviously didn't know Froome's result, but they knew their own. So let's hear from a few of them, starting with Dan Martin.
Dan, it seems like a very strategic time trial. If you were to do it again, would you adopt a different strategy, different pacing?
Yeah, I think the only way you can to get the pacing perfect is by doing it again. You're right. If you did it at a race pace, like maybe you know how to where it hurts more. But then again, in race conditions, it's always different, you know, with the heat and everything as well. But yeah, I mean, I did my best. I mean, I just ran on the limit of my legs. My legs are just like, after yesterday as well. After the last 18 days, it's there's a lot of fatigue there. So yeah, heart rate's probably not that high. It's just again, you just can't push the pedals any harder. But yeah, I mean, it went better than the first time trial anyway.
Yeah, I mean, such a hard time trial. I don't think I got everything I had out. A little bit disappointed, but we'll see how it is on GC. You know, I really want that podium, and I feel like I'm moving well now, and you know, hopefully the worst is behind me now for the tour.
Was it, what were your thoughts leading up to before the start line? Because we've seen a lot of guys, TT bikes, standard bikes. You went with a standard bike in the end.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it suited my climbing more to be on the standard bike, but you know, it's just solid time trial, and you know, we just have to see where the other GC guys are, because you know, it would have been nice to go for the stage, but that's not really the battle.
Richie, before this, you had certain critics saying you couldn't go 3 weeks. I think you've proved them wrong today.
Yeah, I mean, that's their opinion. You know, I've always been in a different role to what I'm in now. It's, you know, see how this tour goes, but I'm pumped for, you know, next year also, and you know, there's a few more days to go yet, but you know, for me, I don't really care what anyone thinks. You know, the team believes in me, and that's the most important thing.
Okay, you didn't feel great at the end of yesterday's stage. Have you recovered a bit today?
Yeah, I felt much better today, and I think for GC it was a good day for me, especially in the end. I I could do a good pace, and it was a really hard time trial.
And your equipment choices were very important today. Are you happy with the choices you made?
Yeah, for sure. I think really thought well about this choice, and I think it was the best choice for me. I've been training on this bike already. It was a really light bike, close to 6.8 kilos on a mountain TT like this, and still having a good position for climbing. So I think I made the right choice.
Ready to go on the attack tomorrow?
We will see.
Thanks.
He did pretty well though, Bauke Mollema, Jens. At one point it looked as though Yates had taken out most of that 26 seconds that he had behind him this morning, but only 2 seconds on the line.
Well, it looked like at the start as he would struggle a little bit, but he seemed to gain some time back. One thing I noticed is that out of all the favorites, it's only Quintana and Bauke Mollema. They warmed up without any ice or any cooling vest. All the others had cooling vests. Maybe that had an effect on the way they started or on the way they finished today's stage, because it is really hot out here.
Yeah, very hot. All kinds of different approaches. We've heard from a selection of riders. We haven't heard from the man who won the stage. Let's hear from him now, Chris Froome.
Perfectly timed effort, a perfectly planned effort. Mission more than accomplished with a stage win that was amazing.
Yeah. I really didn't expect to beat Tom today. I think pacing was key today. I really started off quite steady and really controlled that first part, and then just gave it everything I had over the top, over the last part. So, no, really happy with that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm sure he is, Jens, because you were talking yesterday about you thinking that he wanted to stamp his authority on this race with a mountain stage win. He didn't get that, but even though he knows he's going to win the race overall, it's important for a yellow jersey to do it with some style, with a flourish.
Absolutely, you want to win in style. I mean, a rider of his caliber, of course he wants to win, in style, and he put his mark on the race today. The race for yellow is over. Let's be clear about that. But the silver lining is, place 2 to 6, they're all within roughly 1 minute. That is going to be exciting to see the battle for second and third place here. That's far from over. So let's focus on that in the next days, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 1 minute and 8 seconds separating those riders, and 2 big mountain stages still to come. We'll take a break. We'll have the presentations on the other side of it. Best of luck with that if you're entering. There's Chris Froome. One thing we didn't mention today, he's in the regulation skin suit because he's in the yellow jersey. He didn't have the chance to wear his own highly engineered one, but the disadvantage didn't hold him back too much. He's the stage winner, and let's see him on the podium in a minute after we've checked the GC. There it is. He has a lead of 3 minutes 52 now over Bauke Mollema, 4:16 over Adam Yates, 4:37 on Nairo Quintana, 4:57 on Romain Bardet, and 5 minutes over Richie Porte. None of those men are going to catch him, but they've got every chance of catching each other. Let's get over to the presentations then, as we join Ned, and Froome will be on the podium as stage winner and race leader.
Chris Froome heads to the top step of the podium for a second time on the Tour de France. He takes another stage win in his increasingly unstoppable march to Paris, where who could possibly dispute his claim to be standing on the very top step in that jersey and taking the applause of the crowd in Paris. This is, at this point at least, one of the most comfortable of his Tour de France victories, as he shakes the hand of Bernard Hinault. And Hinault knows, a man who won the World Championship just down the road in Sallanches, that he is looking at a man who is not his total equal just yet, but if he continues to ride like this over the next few years, it's not without the realms of possibility that Chris Froome could find himself in that elite club of Tour de France riders. Today, Eddie Merckx has dropped in on the race to give Chris Froome his blessing, no doubt, and watch him take another yellow jersey. No one's taken more yellow jerseys than Eddie Merckx, but Chris Froome's collection is pretty awesome now. When will he finally get the recognition that he deserves? Well, that's for the future. He hasn't won the Tour de France yet, but his collection of lions and yellow jerseys grows by the day, and that was a pretty flawless performance from Chris Froome on what is becoming a flawless Tour de France for him.
Well, it's funny, Ned talks there about, you know, when he might get the credit for what he's done, Chris Froome. And one thing I was perhaps slightly worried about going into today's mountain time trial, where there are lots of people on the route. You remember last year how much abuse he got, and someone threw a cup of urine in his face. And, you know, this was exactly that kind of arena if the crowd mood was against him. But it didn't seem to be.
Fortunately not. And, I mean, come on. Chris Froome, he's the most likable guy on earth. I had this question, exactly this question with some Danish colleagues before. And like, people, how dare you not giving him the recognition he deserves? He's a brilliant bike rider. He's a really soft-speaking, intelligent, integer person. Yeah, not many people better in cycling than him. So people, please, give him the respect he deserves. I mean, he's just a great person for our sport. And he's a hard-working guy trying to win a race. So give him the credit he deserves. He's just a brilliant bike rider, point.
OK. Perfect seal of approval from Jens Voigt. Let's hear from the man himself. He's with Matt.
Chris, congratulations. A brilliant win descending, a brilliant win against the clock. You've been the best climber here, but what we haven't seen from you yet is a stage win in the mountains. What have you got planned for the coming days?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I only looked as far as today. Obviously, there's two more big days to come now. Hopefully, I didn't leave too much out on the road today, but I imagine at this point, I mean, it's 2 days out from Paris. It's just going to be giving it everything we've got now, just these last couple of days to get the job done.
Chris, I imagine you knew every centimetre of today's time trial, and I imagine you know the same of the coming stages. You've reconnoitred them, you know what's coming.
I have. Tomorrow is a very tricky stage, a lot of tricky descents, and there's talk about thunderstorms during the race, so it's definitely going to have to be a stage where we stay right on our game. I mean, of course, it's fantastic that I open up my lead today, but we can't relax now. We can't relax and switch off. We've got to see this through right to the end.
Yep, he's right, Chris Froome. The Tour finishes with a pair of vicious climbing days. Not quite a matching pair because stage 19 has a mountaintop finish and 20s is downhill. They're both short, though, and designed to be raced at speed. 146 kilometres tomorrow, taking the riders from Albertville along the shores of Lake Annecy and over a couple of warm-up climbs before the big two at the back end of the stage. The biggest climb of the day is the super category Monte de Bizan at 1,723 metres. After that, the riders revisit part of today's time trial course, then hit the foot of the climb up to Saint-Gervais-Mont Blanc. Not actually Mont Blanc, they'll be opposite Mont Blanc, so we should have spectacular views again like we did yesterday. We're at 12 o'clock tomorrow, by the way, for what should be a huge climbing day. And the race, as we say, tightening up nicely behind him. Who do you think in those clutch of four riders from second Bauke Mollema to fifth Richie Porte has got the legs and the will to attack and move up?
Looking at the last 2 days and the last two stages, clearly Richie Porte is the man to watch. He's coming. He seemed to be on an uphill form. He seemed to be getting stronger and better every day. Romain Bardet, brilliant climber, big French hope. He wants to be better than 5th or 6th place. So them two, they're going to go up. I'm a little afraid Bauke Mollema and Adam Yates, they suffer a little bit. Adam Yates only has 24 seconds to second place. There he is, Adam Yates on the podium, only 24 seconds to second place, but also only 21 seconds to hold Quintana off.
Yeah, I mean, his white jersey is assured. I don't think Louis Meintjes is going to catch him, although he took a bit of time off him in the time trial today. So he's had a brilliant tour, whatever, but you think he might struggle to hold on to the podium?
He's young, he's in his first year. I wish him the best and I hope he stays on the podium. He would so deserve it after his brilliant tour. I'm sure the white jersey is pretty much glued to his shoulders. I mean, he got 3 minutes through Louis Meintjes. He's going to keep the white jersey. But for the overall, we see.
OK. Well, he's just stepped off the podium. He's with Matt Rendle. Let's hear from Adam Yates himself.
Adam Yates, congratulations. Fantastic ride from today's performance.
Honestly, a little bit not disappointed, but I was pretty strong in the first time check, and then the legs kind of fell off. I was pulling squares on the big wide road. So yeah, no, I did the best I could, and yeah, like I said, the legs kind of fell off in the last half. But yeah, other than Froome and a couple of the other guys, I didn't lose too much time, and we're in a day close to Paris, so 2 more days to fight, and yeah, we'll fight for every second.
And Mollema is round about 25 seconds. You round about 20 behind you. It's very tight, isn't it?
But Richie Porte, he's climbing up fast. If it wasn't for the punch on the edges, he'd be ahead of us now in second place. So, yeah, big fight for the podium. And like I said, we'll just in every set.
Good luck, Brendan. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, sorry about the breakup there. We got the gist of it. As you were saying beforehand, only 21 seconds for Quintana. For a man who's been second twice, how much motive is there for Quintana to fight for third place on the podium, do you think?
Well, it's only 21 seconds to podium, so podium would be his minimum objective coming into this tour. Now, circumstances are different and complicated for Quintana, but he's still going to fight for that jersey. But looking at that interview of Adam Yates now, I love the way how he's totally relaxed and like he's just brushing off the pressure on his shoulders like that. Brilliant young man.
All right. OK, we've got to get off air in order to